A loud bang echoed through the halls of Donghai 3rd Martial Arts High School. I watched as a figure flew out of the Class 5 classroom like a kite with a broken string. He plummeted straight down from the building and slammed into the ground with a sickening thud. After a long moment, the man scrambled to his feet, looking like a complete wreck. He shook his fist at the classroom and screamed that he was done, that no one could pay him enough to teach those monsters. This was the 3rd homeroom teacher to quit Class 5 in less than 2 weeks. The students and faculty watching from the sidelines didn't even look surprised anymore. We were all numb to it. The news reached our grade supervisor, Lu Jun, almost immediately. Lu Jun was a man built like a bear, but right now, he looked like he had a permanent migraine. Class 5 was a nightmare. There were only 10 students, but every single one of them was a spoiled brat from a powerful, wealthy family. They were rebellious, stubborn, and completely untouchable. You couldn't reason with them, and you certainly couldn't punish them. But the school couldn't just leave them without a teacher. Lu Jun called an emergency meeting for all the teachers who didn't currently have a class. We stood around his office, looking at each other awkwardly. This was the 4th meeting this month for the same reason. Nobody wanted to touch Class 5. They were little kings of chaos who spent every second trying to break their teachers. Lu Jun looked at us, his face dead serious. He told us Class 5 needed a new leader. He promised that whoever could handle them would get a double year-end bonus. When nobody spoke up, he started scanning the room like a predator. He pointed at a young man named Teacher Lee. Lee nearly jumped out of his skin. He stammered that he was just a new hire with 0 experience and wouldn't last 3 days. Lu Jun frowned and turned to Teacher Chun, a man with a scarred face and a missing left hand. Chun didn't even wait for the question. He told the supervisor that if he went in there, either he or the students wouldn't make it out alive. Lu Jun sighed. Knowing Chin's violent history on the front lines against beasts made him a bad fit for a classroom. Finally, Lu Jun slammed his hand on the desk. He said he would apply to the school for a bottle of body-tempering liquid as an extra reward. The room went silent. In this world, martial arts were everything. Vicious beasts roamed the lands, and strength was the only currency that mattered. Even for teachers, our pay was tied to our cultivation level. Body-tempering liquid was incredibly rare and expensive. It cost at least 500,000 coins on the black market, and even if you had the money, you needed connections to find it. I felt my heart skip a beat. I was Su Yang, a theory teacher who had been stuck at the peak of the 9th grade martial artist realm since graduation. I couldn't break through to the 8th grade martial spirit level no matter how hard I tried. That liquid was exactly what I needed. But then I thought about Class 5 and my stomach turned. I was hired to teach theory and general knowledge, not combat. My actual fighting strength was pretty weak. If those kids decided to jump me, I'd end up in the hospital or worse. Suddenly, a cold, mechanical voice rang out inside my head. It told me the strongest famous teacher system had been bound to my soul. A sharp pain shot through my brain as memories and information flooded in. The system was simple. If I guided my students to become stronger, I would become stronger too. A mission notification popped up in my vision. The task was to take over Class 5. The reward was a random mythic level skill. I stared at the air in shock. Skills were ranked from common all the way up to mythic. A mythic skill as a starter reward was insane. I didn't need to think twice. Even if Class 5 was a living hell, I was going to walk right into the fire. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor. I told the supervisor I would take the job. The other teachers looked at me like I was a dead man walking. They whispered that I was too young and had been blinded by the supervisor's empty promises. Lu Jun, however, looked overjoyed. He grabbed me before I could change my mind and rushed me toward the administrative office to sign the paperwork. As I followed him, a notification pinged in my mind. The mission was complete. I had received a mythic grade exclusive skill called Invincible Teacher. I checked the details immediately. The skill was passive and had no cooldown. It meant that any damage caused to me by students in my assigned class would be completely neutralized. My senses, pain, touch, even taste, would be shielded during an attack. A wave of relief washed over me. The kids in Class 5 might not have much discipline, but their families had pumped them full of resources. Most of them were already at the 8th grade martial spirit level and had high-end gear. They were dangerous. But with this skill, They couldn't touch me. After the paperwork was finished, Lu Jun patted my shoulder. He told me the class was mine now. I looked him in the eye and asked if the body-tempering liquid was a real promise or just a lie to get me to sign. He turned serious and pointed at the heavy marble desk in his office. He told me that if he couldn't get that liquid for me, he would eat the entire desk right in front of my face. I smiled. With his word and my new skill, I felt ready for anything. But as I walked toward the classroom, the system updated again. My next task was to get at least one student to a D rank evaluation. The system ranked students from S down to E. C rank was considered a passing grade. I looked at the files for my 10 new students and felt a headache coming on. These kids were so bad that not a single one of them even reached the D rank. I had my work cut out for me. This situation was more ridiculous than I imagined. I stood outside the door of Class 5. The classroom was massive, over 200 square meters, split into a study area and a training zone. The study area was basic, just a blackboard and 10 desks, but the training zone was packed. It was filled with high-end fitness equipment and racks of weapons like sabers, spears, and staffs. Inside, the students were whispering. I caught fragments of their conversation. I heard the new teacher's name is Su Yang, one student said, his voice dripping with disdain. He's only a 9th grade martial artist. They brought him in specifically to teach martial arts theory. Only 9th grade? Another scoffed. We could beat him ourselves. How does he have the nerve to be our class monitor? I bet he won't last a day. He won't even last a single lesson, a short-haired boy said. He pulled back his sleeve to reveal a sophisticated mechanical device strapped to his wrist. I'm going to let him taste the Thunder Needle. The Thunder Needle was nasty. It was incredibly fast and completely silent. It wasn't lethal, but it released a high-voltage shock that caused instant paralysis. Even a 6th grade martial grandmaster would be buckled by it. For someone as weak as a 9th grade, it would probably make them lose control of their bladder. Isn't that a bit much? A girl asked, looking hesitant. He's just a 9th grade. If he wets himself in front of us, he'll die of shame. As she spoke, she casually picked up a heavy metal spiked mace. Maybe I should just sneak up and hit him a few times instead. The needle might embarrass him, but your mace will actually kill him, the short-haired boy hissed. A burly student frowned at them both. Why are your methods so low class? A martial artist should fight face-to-face with real blades. Sneak attacks are for cowards. Take off your electrified brass knuckles before you talk to us, the others shot back. Suddenly, a boy acting as a lookout at the door hissed, "He's coming." The classroom went silent instantly. Every student scrambled back to their seats. They sat up straight, looking like perfect, disciplined angels. I stepped into the doorway and stopped. The silence was eerie. 10 pairs of eyes were fixed on me. It didn't feel like the rebellious wasteland I'd heard about. It felt like a trap. I hesitated for a second, my instincts screaming at me to stay back. But then I remembered my invincible teacher skill. I had nothing to fear. I walked in confidently and stood behind the podium. "Hello, everyone," I said. "Stand up." Zhu Tao, the class monitor, barked. They all rose in perfect unison. "Good morning, teacher." I was genuinely surprised. I expected them to throw insults or ignore me, not give me a polite greeting. "Please sit down. From today on, I am your new class teacher, Su Yang." As I spoke, I activated my system's vision. Information panels began floating over their heads. I looked at Zhu Tao first. Name, Zhu Tao. Age, 16. Realm, 8th grade martial spirit. Cultivation method, coiling dragon divine fist. Compatibility, 27%. Defects, unstable foundation due to excessive pill consumption. Force growth has slowed his cultivation efficiency. His method doesn't suit him. Efficiency, minus 244%. Advice, change his cultivation method or modify the current one. My gaze shifted to the short-haired boy, Li Yiming. Efficiency, minus 427%. Advice, start over from scratch. I scanned the rest of the room and felt a headache forming. Zhu Tao was actually the best in the class. Everyone else was sitting around minus 400% efficiency. Aside from the monitor, the system's advice for every single one of them was basically trash it and start over. This was beyond absurd. Still, I had the system. I could save them. I decided to start with Zhu Tao. I needed to find a high-compatibility method in the school's library, though getting his wealthy parents to agree to a basic school method would be a nightmare. I stood there, lost in thought, staring into space. The students exchanged glances. Li Yiming saw his chance. Under the desk, he raised his arm. The thunder needle was aimed directly at my thigh. Thwip! A faint flash of light flickered from his sleeve. The students held their breath, waiting for me to collapse in a twitching heap. 1 second passed. 2 seconds. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I was still busy thinking about cultivation charts. The students were stunned. Why wasn't I screaming? Why wasn't I shaking on the floor? The girl with the mace couldn't help herself. Hey, teacher. I snapped out of my thoughts and looked at her. Yes? What is it? Are your legs numb? She asked tentatively. I stared at her, confused. Are you asking if I'm your mom? That's a bit forward, don't you think? I ignored the weird question and started the lesson. I talked about martial arts general knowledge, specifically the evolution of beasts. I explained how, in the last 200 years, beasts had begun evolving to mimic human forms and even learn martial arts. I covered the 3 categories: beast type, semi-humanoid, and humanoid. The weirdest part was that they actually listened. No one threw anything. No one talked back. They were focused, watching my every move. It made me nervous. 3 teachers had already quit this class. There was no way they were being this good just because I was handsome. They were definitely planning something big. But I didn't care. My skill made me untouchable. If I wanted to reach the peak of this world and marry a Valkyrie, I had to fix these kids. As soon as the bell rang, I assigned them self-study and headed straight for the library to find a new method for Zhu Tao. The moment I left the room, the class exploded. They huddled around Li Yiming. What happened? Did you forget to charge the thunder needle? I don't know. Li Yiming cried, frantically stripping the device off his arm to check the battery. It hit him. I saw it hit him. Li Yiming was losing his mind. He'd spent the entire class period staring at his arm, convinced his thunder needle had malfunctioned. It was the only explanation. But when he checked the device, his face went pale. The lights were all green. The battery was full. Everything was working perfectly. It makes no sense, he muttered, showing the device to the rest of the class. If it's working, why is that guy Su Yang acting like nothing happened? Maybe the needle missed, someone suggested. No way. I saw it hit, Li Yiming snapped. He looked at one of the other boys. How about I shoot you, and we see if it's broken? Get lost. I'm not your guinea pig. While they were arguing, a sharp gasp cut through the room. It came from the front of the class. Everyone turned. Zhu Tao, the class monitor, was kneeling by the teacher's podium. He reached down and picked something up. It was a metal needle, snapped clean in half. The room went dead silent. Li Yiming's eyes nearly popped out of his head. That's impossible. The thunder needle is made of reinforced alloy. It doesn't just break. Maybe it was a cheap knockoff, someone whispered. Shut up, Li Yiming yelled. You saw it work on the last teacher. He was twitching on the floor for 10 minutes. Zhu Tao didn't join the shouting. He held the 2 pieces of the needle up to the light, his expression darkening. It's not a manufacturing defect, he said quietly. Then what is it? The girl with the mace asked, her voice trembling. Zhu Tao held the broken pieces out so everyone could see. Look at the tip. A collective gasp filled the room. The sharp, piercing point of the needle was gone. It had been flattened, smashed into a dull, blunt nub. It hit something harder than metal, Zhu Tao said, his voice heavy with realization. The needle snapped because it couldn't penetrate his skin. This guy, he has bones of steel. He's at least a rank 6 martial grandmaster. While the students were spiraling into a panic, I was already at the library. I swiped my ID card at the gate and stepped into the quiet, high-tech halls. Most modern martial arts libraries were digital now. They held millions of basic cultivation methods, though the really high-level stuff was kept under lock and key at the top universities. I sat down at a terminal and sighed. My own cultivation was nothing special. I practiced the 9 refinement body art, a standard-issue manual from my college. Without expensive resources or specialized liquids, I was stuck at a plateau. But I wasn't here for myself. I was here for Zhu Tao. My system could check the compatibility between a person and a technique, but it was tedious. I had to test them one by one. How about this one? I clicked a manual. Compatibility check, 6%. Too low. This one. Compatibility check, 11%. I rubbed my temples. There were over 30,000 basic manuals in the national database. If I went one by one, the kids in Class 5 would be retired by the time I found a match. I had to be smarter. I had to narrow the search. Martial arts generally fell into 4 categories: body arts, weapon arts, movement arts, and defense arts. Zhu Tao was currently practicing a fist technique, but clearly, it wasn't working. I decided to pivot. I tried palm techniques. Nanyang palm. Compatibility check, 34%. Better. Much better than his current fist style. I felt a spark of hope. I tried movement. Godwind leg. Compatibility check, 24%. I spent 20 minutes filtering through every body-based art I could find. Nothing broke 40%. It was frustrating, but it told me one thing. Zhu Tao wasn't meant to fight empty-handed. I switched the filter to weapon arts. I tried the basics first: swords, spears, staves. Compatibility check, 44%. Compatibility check, 47%. Compatibility check, 48%. I leaned back, a grin spreading across my face. We were getting somewhere. He was definitely a weapon user. But even at 48%, it wasn't peak material. I kept digging, scrolling past the common weapons until I hit the hidden weapons subcategory. Heart-piercing needle technique? I clicked it. Compatibility check, 107%. Holy crap. The shout escaped my mouth before I could stop it. In the dead silence of the library, it sounded like a gunshot. Dozens of students and faculty turned to glare at me. I turned beet red, bowing frantically and whispering apologies until they looked away. Inside, I was vibrating with excitement. 107%. That was insane. It meant he wasn't just good for this style. He was born for it. But there was a catch. If he switched to needles, he'd have to start his training from scratch. The mechanics of throwing a needle were nothing like punching. And honestly, needles were niche. In a world with guns and high-velocity projectiles, throwing a needle seemed outdated. You had to be a top-tier grandmaster just to make a needle as lethal as a bullet. Even our vice principal, Lin Jinghua, had been stuck at the half-step grandmaster rank for 20 years. But compatibility was everything. If the match was this high, his training speed would skyrocket. It might even flip his negative growth rate into the positives. I didn't stop there. If one needle technique was 107%, maybe there was something even better. I set the filter to scan every needle-based manual in the database. 724 results popped up. I started clicking. The heart-piercing needle technique was a popular choice, but I wasn't satisfied. It was still early, and since the martial arts school didn't have a fixed class schedule, I had plenty of time to keep digging. Most of the students' time was self-managed, with teachers acting more like supervisors or mentors. Of course, in Class 5, supervision was a joke. I just started as their head teacher, and I knew they wouldn't listen to a word I said. They'd likely just nod to my face and ignore me the second I turned my back. As long as they weren't killing each other, I decided to leave them alone for now. I opened my notebook and started recording the data. The sun-hanging needle technique had a 94% compatibility. The 9 Ling Luo needles sat at 87%. I felt a surge of excitement. Zhu Tao was definitely a natural-born needle user. Almost every needle technique I checked scored over 80%. Still, nothing had beaten that initial 107% score. I spent another 15 minutes clicking through the database until my breath caught in my throat. The Lotus Yang severing needle technique. Compatibility, 213%. I was right. There were techniques out there that could break the 200% mark. If Zhu Tao practiced this, his efficiency wouldn't just double, it would explode. But the name gave me pause. I frowned and opened the digital manual. It sounded like an ancient martial arts style. Modern techniques usually had flashy, Chinibyu-style names like Nine Heavens Thunder Destruction. Most of those were just reworked versions of ancient manuals created by theoretical geniuses. And geniuses were usually a little crazy. I took one look at the manual and immediately closed it. The ancient cultivation method was insane. To practice the Lotus Yang severing technique, the user had to repeatedly strike their own vital parts to trigger intense pain. This pain would force their qi to flow in reverse. Plus, It required a plant called lotus white for support. A big red warning on the first page stated the plant was extinct. The manual was only there for historical reference. What's the point of keeping this then? I muttered, rolling my eyes. My excitement vanished instantly. Back in the Class 5 classroom, it was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The 10 students were huddled together in the study area, their expressions strange and conflicted. "There's no way that Su Guy is a martial grandmaster," someone whispered. "Look at him. He doesn't have the vibe." "And how old is he? 27? 28? A grandmaster at that age would be a once-in-a-thousand-years genius." "Exactly," another student added. "If he were a genius, he'd be at a top-tier national defense university, not teaching at a regular martial arts high school. The pay here is peanuts. A grandmaster could make hundreds of thousands a month just hunting demonic beasts." "I don't believe it either," a third chimed in. "Tao, you're overthinking it." Zhu Tao's brow was furrowed deep. He looked at the 2 needles on the table. "Then how do you explain these? If he's not a grandmaster with skin like iron, there's no way he could have blocked my thunderbolt needles." The group went silent. They couldn't explain that. "Maybe," Li Yiming suggested, "he had metal plates strapped to his legs? He could have prepared in advance." The group relaxed instantly. That had to be it. He was a fraud who came prepared. But Zhu Tao still looked doubtful. I watched him walk. It didn't look like he was wearing armor. "Who cares?" The girl with the spiked club slammed her weapon onto the table. "Let me sneak up and hit him a few times. We'll find out soon enough." Outside the classroom, passing students and teachers felt a strange chill. Usually, Class 5 was a riot zone. Today, it was eerily calm. "Did you hear? The new head teacher, Su Yang, actually suppressed them," a student whispered. "No way. I know Teacher Su. He taught a few theory classes for us. He's that powerful?" "He must be. They kicked out their last teacher this morning, and now they're sitting in there like angels." The news spread fast. It eventually reached the office of the grade coordinator, Lu Jun. A teacher walking in to drop off files smiled at him. "Old Lu, that kid Su Yang is impressive. He just took over and already has Class 5 under control. You've got a great eye for talent." Lu Jun, who was mid-sip, sprayed tea all over his desk. "What? Under control?" "Yeah, I just walked by. They're all sitting quietly, discussing things. It's like a completely different class." Lu Jun didn't look happy. He started tapping his forehead against his marble desk, looking miserable. "I wonder which part of this desk is softest to hit," he muttered. Meanwhile, I had been in the library all morning, and my frustration was peaking. Out of 724 needle techniques, I had screened most of them. I found 27 manuals with compatibility over 200%, but every single one was unusable. They were either too extreme or required materials that had been extinct for centuries. Some needed the blood of ancient beasts, but modern monsters weren't the same. Half had gone extinct, and the other half had mutated beyond recognition. Especially in the island nation, their monsters were all radioactive mutations now. They were constantly begging for international help. China, out of humanitarian spirit, sent them clean water just so they could survive long enough to keep suffering from their own mistakes. Across the ocean, the former superpower Eagle Land was a mess of warring states and internal strife. The world was a chaotic place, but China remained the most stable. "No wonder needles are so niche," I grumbled. I skipped all the extreme manuals. I couldn't lead my students down a path that would ruin their mental health or their bodies. That would be a violation of my ethics as a teacher. Even if they didn't become famous, I wanted them to be decent people. Another 30 minutes passed. Finally, my effort paid off. I found a manual with a staggering 347% compatibility for Zhu Tao. It was called the Heaven Mending Cloud Embroidery Needle. The name sounded like it was written by a sane person. It was a bit flashy for a basic manual, but I didn't mind. I opened it eagerly. As I read, my expression turned odd. It wasn't extreme. In fact, it was almost boring. Compared to other techniques that could lead a practitioner all the way to the 6th-rank Grandmaster level, this one seemed almost low-level. The biggest issue with the Heaven Mending Cloud Embroidery Needle was its ceiling. A practitioner could only ever reach the level of a 7th-rank master. To make things weirder, the manual was written by an ancient tailor who had gained enlightenment while sewing clothes day after day. It felt ridiculous, yet the system insisted the compatibility was over 300%. I decided to keep it as a backup and kept searching. After filtering through all 724 mental techniques, the needle manual was the only one left. I was satisfied with the compatibility. If Zhu Tao was willing to restart his cultivation from scratch, his efficiency would be legendary. But there was a massive problem. Why would he be interested in such a low-level technique? More importantly, his family would never agree to it. I didn't have a solid plan yet. I hadn't even earned the trust of Class 5, so getting them to cooperate with a total cultivation reset was a pipe dream. I copied the manual to my drive and headed back to my office. As I walked down the hall, Li Yiming was peeking out from the classroom door. The moment he saw me, he ducked back inside. "The Su guy is back," he hissed. "Damn it, where did he go?" Another student complained. "What kind of homeroom teacher skips an entire morning of classes on his first day? Let's report him to the Academic Affairs Office." They were furious. They had never seen a teacher bail after a single general lecture and not show his face again until after lunch. "Now that he's back, let's test his depth," someone suggested. All eyes turned to Zhu Tao. Zhu Tao had spent the entire morning overthinking. He was convinced I was hiding my true strength and was actually a 6th-rank grandmaster. He trusted his gut. Being the self-proclaimed smartest guy in Class 5, he was even willing to bet his allowance on it. "How do we test him?" a girl asked. "Should I just sneak up and hit him with my hammer?" "No." Zhu Tao pushed her back into her seat. "If he really is a 9th-rank weakling, you'll kill him. You only ever aim for the back of the head. I want to be a delinquent, not a murderer. I'm not trying to end up in prison sewing clothes on a machine." After some debate, they settled on a plan. Zhu Tao would go to my office and lure me into the training area. I was sitting in my office, trying to figure out how to persuade, Zhu Tao to give up his family's technique for the needle manual. A knock at the door startled me. I looked up and saw Zhu Tao standing there. Speak of the devil. "Hey, Zhu Tao, what brings you here?" I asked. Zhu Tao blinked, looking a bit nervous. "Teacher, we ran into some problems with our cultivation. We need you to come to the classroom and give us some guidance." I raised an eyebrow. I didn't buy it for a second. They were definitely trying to prank me. Why did I have to go to the classroom to give advice? But then, an idea hit me. "Zhu Tao, let me ask you something," I said. "Hypothetically, if a basic mental technique appeared that was perfect for you, one that would make your cultivation speed explode, but you had to abandon your current family technique and start over, what would you do?" Zhu Tao looked at me like I was an idiot. Nobody in their right mind would throw away years of hard work to start over. "I'd have to know what kind of technique it is first," he replied. "Is it a true law?" His eyes lit up. "Wait, is it one of those dual cultivation techniques you do with girls?" "What? No," I snapped. "If I had something like that, do you think I'd give it to you? Also, you're a student. Watch your mouth." The kids in other classes might raise a teacher's blood pressure, but Class 5 went straight for the jugular. I forced a polite, awkward smile. I couldn't lose my temper yet. I needed to build a relationship first. "If it's not that, then I'm not interested," Zhu Tao said, curling his lip. "A basic technique is useless. No matter how good it is, the limit is the 5th rank. The technique I'm practicing now can take me all the way to the Emperor level." I gave a dry laugh, but didn't argue. With his lazy attitude, he'd be lucky to reach the 5th rank. In fact, if he kept slacking, he'd probably regress back to the 9th rank soon. Cultivation is like rowing against the current. If you don't move forward, you drift back. These kids were born with speedboats provided by their families, yet they insisted on putting them in reverse. Still, I was jealous. An emperor-level technique was a priceless treasure that ordinary families could never touch. "Are you coming to help us or not?" Zhu Tao asked impatiently. "If not, I'm leaving." His attitude stung. I had never been treated like this by a student before. He really needed a reality check. But I had to be patient. I wanted to see what they were planning so I could find an opening to establish my authority. With my invincible teacher system, I didn't believe I couldn't handle them. "Fine, let's go," I said, standing up. I followed him to the classroom. As we reached the door, Zhu Tao sped up and walked in first. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Li Yiming hiding in a corner, his sleeves tensed as if he were holding something. He gave Zhu Tao a look. The other students were in the training area, pretending to practice while watching us. I strolled into the room, my back turned toward Li Yiming. I still wasn't ready to give up on my pitch. I reached out and put my hand on Zhu Tao's shoulder. Zhu Tao, let me ask you one more. Zhu Tao's heart skipped a beat. Before I could finish, 10 thunder needles hissed out from Li Yiming's sleeve. They were silent and lightning fast. In the blink of an eye, they slammed into my back. Li Yiming, you idiot. Zhu Tao screamed. He didn't have time to move. Because my hand was on his shoulder, the massive surge of electricity passed right through me and into him. His entire body went numb. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed forward. Zhu Tao? What happened? I yelled, catching him instinctively. He was twitching violently in my arms. I turned pale. Zhu Tao, don't scare me like this. The classroom exploded into chaos. Let go of him, Sue. Let go, they screamed. If you don't let go, he's going to die. I let go immediately, and Zhu Tao hit the floor with a heavy thud. He was still convulsing, foaming at the mouth, and I could smell the distinct scent of urine. Get him to the infirmary. Now. Minutes later, I was standing outside the school clinic, pacing back and forth in a panic. The students from Class 5 were staring at me with the strangest expressions. They were losing their minds. Was I a 6th-rank grandmaster or not? If I wasn't, how was I standing there perfectly fine when my back looked like a pincushion? But if I was a grandmaster, how was it possible that I hadn't even noticed the attack? I didn't even notice when Li Yiming reached behind my back to retrieve his thunder needles on the way to the infirmary. My mind was a complete blank. Even a powerful martial sovereign would have reacted to that much electricity. Being tough doesn't mean you're immune to lightning. Besides, if I were truly that powerful, I would have dodged the attack easily. I wouldn't have been standing there like a clueless idiot. My own head was spinning. I knew exactly what had happened. My invincible teacher system had kicked in, nullifying all the damage, which was why I hadn't felt a thing. But I couldn't tell them that. If something happened to Zhu Tao, my career was over. I might even end up behind bars. The thought of spending my life sewing clothes in a prison cell made my blood run cold. I put on my best serious teacher face and glared at the students. Someone tell me exactly what happened. Why is Zhu Tao like this? They all looked at each other, speechless. They couldn't tell if I was genuinely clueless or just acting. You really don't know? One of them asked. If I knew, would I be asking you? I snapped. A life is on the line here. Stop playing games. Li Yiming's face was pale. He really might die, he whispered. I froze. Li Yiming, what do you know? He looked up at me with a look of pure misery. He knew that if Zhu Tao woke up, he was a dead man. Teacher Sue, I need to request a leave of absence. A leave? Now. I was baffled. I want to take 3 years off, he said, backing away. I'll come back after Zhu Tao graduates. Goodbye. The other students grabbed him before he could bolt. You can run, but you can't hide. He knows where you live. Li Yiming pointed a trembling finger at me. It's not my fault. It's his. If he hadn't touched Zhu Tao's shoulder, the current wouldn't have jumped. What are you talking about? I shouted, losing my patience. Stop speaking in riddles. The Class 5 students frowned. You seriously don't know? I don't know a damn thing. Li Yiming couldn't hold it in anymore. He pulled out his mechanical launcher. Are you wearing armored plates under your clothes? The ones the school gives teachers. Many martial artists wear solid steel plates during training to build strength. They have high-tech, insulated linings. If you were wearing those, the electricity would have been blocked. It was a standard benefit at number 3 high school, but I was so weak that walking in those plates felt like a chore. Mine were currently gathering dust in my locker. When I saw his launcher, the realization hit me like a truck. Thunder needles. Those were specialized tools used by the Kunlun Patrol to take down thick-skinned beasts and dangerous criminals. Even the civilian versions cost millions. I was about to deny wearing the armor, but I caught myself. The truth was my system, and I couldn't reveal that secret. But wait, I was wearing a short-sleeved shirt. How could I be wearing full-body armor? Anyone with eyes could see I wasn't. I decided to dodge the question entirely. I'm going inside to check on him, I said, rushing into the infirmary. Li Yiming threw his hands up as soon as I disappeared. See? He's guilty. I knew it. Smack. Someone slapped him upside the head. You idiot. Use your brain. He's wearing a t-shirt. Where would the plates go? Even if he had them on his chest, he wasn't wearing insulated gloves. If he touched Zhu Tao, he should have been fried too. But he's fine. Then how? Inside the clinic, Zhu Tao was slowly regaining consciousness. He looked like he had just come out of heavy anesthesia. The school doctor gave me the nod, and I leaned over him. Zhu Tao, how do you feel? I asked softly. I saw my great-grandmother, he muttered. She was waving at me from a bright light. I let out a long breath of relief. Thank God, he was an 8th-rank martial disciple. His physical recovery was far beyond a normal person's. Plus, thunder needles were designed to incapacitate, not kill. He was going to be fine. I wasn't going to prison after all. The moment Zhu Tao fully woke up, he bolted out of the bed to hunt down Li Yiming. Brother Tao? It wasn't me. It was Su. Li Yiming screamed as he sprinted down the hallway. Get back here. Zhu Tao roared. Seeing him so energetic made me feel much better. However, the rest of Class 5 was staring at me like I was a freak of nature. They were still trying to figure out if I was a hidden 6th-rank grandmaster. I stayed silent. If I were a grandmaster, I wouldn't be a lowly teacher. I'd be sitting in the principal's chair. Class is back in session, I said firmly, turning on my heel and walking away. I left them with nothing but the sight of my mysterious, retreating back. Later, back in the classroom, the students held an emergency meeting. Based on everything we saw, Su is definitely not a grandmaster, one student concluded. Tao, you lost the bet. Zhu Tao sat there with a bruised face, looking thoughtful. Li Yiming, who had already been beaten black and blue, tried to speak up. Brother Tao, I think. Shut up, Zhu Tao snapped. They all agreed on one new rule. Never use high-voltage equipment on Teacher Su again. They didn't want a repeat of the accident. There's only one explanation, Zhu Tao said finally. What is it? I know the cultivation method they teach at the East Sea Martial Arts Normal University, Zhu Tao said, leaning forward. It's called the 9 Refined Body Art. It's a pure defensive technique. At the 5th level, it gives you bronze skin and iron bones. Your internal organs become incredibly resistant to shock. It's not a true grandmaster's body, but the defense is terrifying. It could definitely handle high-voltage electricity. Wait, someone interrupted. That's a high-level manual. If he reached the 5th level, how could he still be a 9th-rank weakling? Zhu Tao looked dead serious. It's possible. How do we test rank? Machines. We test power, agility, and endurance. To get a high rank, you need a balanced score. The realization hit the room like a lightning bolt. You mean? Someone gasped. Teacher Su is just a coward who put every single stat point into defense. Zhu Tao nodded. Exactly. His endurance and defense scores must be off the charts, but he probably fails every other test. That's why his overall rank is so low. The mystery was solved. To the students of Class 5, I wasn't a hidden master anymore. I was just a weirdo who was really, really good at taking a beating. Everything finally made sense to them. Zhu Tao was the genius of Class 5 for a reason. He had figured out my secret. The students whispered among themselves, convinced I had only taken the job because I was thick-skinned and immune to pain. They didn't think I was a grandmaster anymore. They just thought I was a human sandbag. Zhu Tao looked frustrated. He had lost the bet. He reluctantly handed over his 30,000 yuan in pocket money to the other students, but his eyes stayed fixed on me. He hated my guts, but something was bothering him. He remembered when I came to his office and asked that bizarre question about switching to a needle-based cultivation technique. He looked at his own hands, calloused from years of heavy training. He wondered if I had some secret method to speed up cultivation. Why needles, though? Was it because his hands were suited for it? He fell into a deep silence, lost in thought. Back in my office, I was also deep in thought. Things were not going well. I hadn't even started building a relationship with Class 5, and now they hated me even more. If I couldn't get them to cooperate, my system tasks would never move forward. A teacher without students who listen is just a guy talking to a wall. I couldn't just suck up to them, though. I needed authority. I needed to be clever. I knew these kids. They were young, arrogant, and impulsive. That was their biggest weakness. I decided to head back to the classroom. As soon as I walked in, the atmosphere turned cold. Every student stared at me with pure hostility. We don't have any personal grudges, do we? I asked, trying to keep it light. There's no need for those faces. We didn't before, but we do now. Li Yiming snapped, his face turning red. I'm never going to stop hating you, Su. I twitched. I was the victim of his electric needles, but he was the one acting offended. Fine. If they wouldn't listen to reason, I'd use their tempers against them. Since you're so brave, do you dare to make a bet with me? I challenged him. If you win, you can do whatever you want. I won't interfere with your lives at all. But if you lose, you have to follow my instructions and practice seriously. Do you have the guts? Li Yiming's eyes widened. He was about to shout his agreement when Zhu Tao suddenly reached over and covered his mouth. Don't fall for it, Zhu Tao hissed. It's a trap. Did you forget what we just analyzed? He's trying to bait you. Li Yiming blinked, realizing he almost walked right into it. Damn, Teacher Su, you old fox. You're trying to set me up. I frowned. What analysis were they talking about? Zhu Tao sneered at me. We know your secret, Su. You want us to bet on a physical fight, don't you? You want to see who can take more hits, knowing your defense is high. We aren't that stupid. The rest of the class joined in, mocking me. They thought they had me figured out. Oh, is that so? I muttered. Well, I wonder if the rest of the school would be interested to hear about a certain Class 5 student who got electrocuted and wet his pants in the process. Zhu Tao's face went from smug to pale in a heartbeat. You despicable coward. He lunged toward me, but Li Yiming held him back this time. Tao, don't. It's a trap. He's trying to provoke you. Li Yiming yelled. Zhu Tao kicked him away, his face twisted in rage. He's talking about me, you idiot. Fine, Su. You think your high-level defense makes you invincible? You think I can't touch you? I didn't bother explaining. I didn't care what he thought as long as he took the bait. So, are we betting or not? We're betting, Zhu Tao spat. But by my rules. We're going to the training field for a 100-meter sprint. Whoever crosses the finish line first wins. Do you dare? I squinted. My invincible teacher status only meant I couldn't be harmed. It didn't give me super speed. I was still just a 9th-rank weakling, while Zhu Tao was an 8th-rank martial spirit. In a fair race, I'd lose by a mile. But who said this was going to be a fair race? Fine, I said. But remember, if you lose and try to back out, everyone hears the story about the pants. Zhu Tao looked like he wanted to bite my head off. A gentleman's word is his bond. Let's go. We headed to the track. The students gathered around, sensing something was off. I took my position at the starting line next to Zhu Tao. I had a plan. The moment the signal went off, I wasn't going to run. I was going to grab him. Because of my system, any force he used against me would be neutralized. I'd use that opening to toss him aside and run for it. Zhu Tao was thinking the exact same thing. He figured I had some hidden speed, so he planned to tackle me the moment the race started. With his 8th-rank strength, he figured he could pin me down and then cruise to the finish line. Li Yiming stood to the side, his hand raised. Ready, set, go. Neither of us ran forward. Instead, we both lunged at each other, colliding in a messy embrace right at the starting line. The students stared in total confusion. Zhu Tao immediately tried to throw me, but his face went white. It was like he was trying to move a mountain. I was rooted to the spot, completely immovable. What the hell, he gasped. I didn't give him a second to recover. I let out a sharp yell, wrapped my arms around his waist, and used every bit of strength I had to heave him backward. Because he couldn't actually hurt me, his own momentum worked against him. I threw him behind me like a sack of potatoes. The moment he left my hands, I turned and bolted toward the finish line. I wasn't fast, but I had a 10-meter head start while he was still tumbling through the air. Zhu Tao managed to land on his feet, but by the time he looked up, I was already crossing the finish line, gasping for air. His face turned pitch black. I had won. The entire Class 5 was stunned. They stood there, frozen, staring at the finish line. How was this possible? How did Zhu Tao get tossed aside like a piece of trash by a guy like me? The students rushed to Zhu Tao's side. He looked humiliated, his face a mask of disbelief and anger. I guessed wrong, he muttered, his voice shaking. This guy has already mastered the 6th level of the 9 refined body art. It's the immovable rock state. The others looked confused. Zhu Tao's expression turned dark. My strength was completely neutralized by his defensive technique. It was like trying to push a mountain. I couldn't budge him an inch. They all turned their heads toward the finish line, where I was doubled over, wheezing and gasping for air. I looked like I was about to die from a light jog. One of the students whispered, "Just how much does this guy fear pain? Did he put every single point into defense and ignore everything else?" I ignored their stares. I felt great. Standing at the finish line, I caught my breath and shouted, "Zhu Tao? A bet is a bet. You're not going to back out now, are you?" Zhu Tao's jaw tightened. He looked like he wanted to punch me, but he gritted his teeth. "I'm a man of my word," he barked. "From today on, I'll follow your instructions for my cultivation." Internal joy flooded through me. I knew he wasn't happy about it, but this was the first step. I noticed the rest of the class looking at me with newfound caution and suspicion. I knew I could only pull a stunt like this once. Next time, they wouldn't be so easily fooled. But I'd worry about that later. First, I had to get Zhu Tao to touch that manual. Once he tasted the power of the true method, he'd realize I wasn't his enemy. Later that afternoon, I called Zhu Tao into my office. He walked in with a massive chip on his shoulder. I straightened my posture and put on my most serious teacher face. "A man keeps his word, Zhu Tao. I'm the teacher, you're the student. Give me the respect that position deserves. Stand up straight." He glared at me, but he obeyed. "So why am I here?" "Is that how you address a teacher?" I asked. He practically ground his teeth into dust. "Teacher, Sue, what are your orders?" "I want to talk to you about dual cultivation," I said calmly. Zhu Tao jumped back a full step, his face pale with horror. "With a guy? You want to dual cultivate with me?" I rolled my eyes so hard it hurt. "What is wrong with your head? I'm talking about practicing 2 different mental techniques at the same time." "Oh," he said, then his eyes went wide again. "Wait, that's even stupider. You think I'm some kind of once-in-a-thousand-years martial arts genius? Nobody does that." He wasn't entirely wrong. Usually, a martial artist sticks to one path. If you study basic fist techniques in high school, you move to advanced fist techniques in college. It's a linear progression. My own path was defense. I went from the basic rock technique to the 9 refined body art. Switching paths meant 2 things: dual cultivation or recultivation. Recultivation was dangerous. You had to discard your current power, which often meant breaking your own meridians. In the old days, it turned people into cripples. Nowadays, the government has high-tech equipment to do it safely, but it's mostly for kids who started the wrong way. At Zhu Tao's age, it would take massive resources to catch back up. He'd never agree to it, and his family would lose their minds. But dual cultivation? That was different. It wasn't rare in the elite academies, but it was incredibly difficult. It meant managing 2 different streams of qi in your body. If they clashed, your progress would stall, or your power would backfire. Only geniuses could keep 2 separate flows of energy moving smoothly. Zhu Tao clearly didn't think he was one of them. He had a surprising amount of self-awareness. I looked him dead in the eye, my voice dropping to a solemn tone. "Zhu Tao, I've been observing you for a long time. I've noticed your skeletal structure is unique. Your aura is soaring. The truth is, you are that once-in-a-thousand-years genius. You have the potential to be a god of war." Zhu Tao frowned and pulled out his phone. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Calling the police. This sounds exactly like a telemarketing scam." I cleared my throat, ignoring the insult. "Why do I want you to learn this true method?" "Because you have the talent for it. A specific talent." "How did you find it?" he asked, skeptical. "I'm a teacher. I observe," I lied smoothly. "The moment I touched you, I felt it. A teacher's intuition. Your fingers, they have an extraordinary level of flexibility." Zhu Tao blinked. He looked down at his hands, then back at me. I could tell he was thinking about something else entirely, probably something involving a keyboard or a controller. I knocked on the desk to snap him out of it. "I've lived 16 years and never noticed any true method talent," he grumbled. "I've never even touched a needle and thread." "Then maybe you should start," I said. His face twisted in disgust. "I'm a man. You want me to play with needles? No way. That's embarrassing." The resistance was strong. I had to pivot. "Fine, but you said you'd follow my instructions. Here is your first training task." "What is it?" "Go to your dorm, find all your clothes with holes in them, and sew them back together." Zhu Tao stared at me like I had grown a second head. "Are you kidding? I don't know how to sew." "The internet is full of tutorials," I countered. "Unless you were lying about being a man of your word?" He groaned, his shoulders slumping. Fine. I'll sew the damn clothes. I'll be checking your dorm every night to inspect your work," I added. I knew this kid. If I didn't check, he'd just throw the torn clothes away. "And if you run out of things to fix, don't worry. I have plenty of torn clothes you can practice on. I have enough, he snapped. I waved him off. Good. You're dismissed. I need to meditate. If there's an emergency, find me in the office. As he stomped out, looking absolutely miserable, I let out a long sigh. I wasn't sure if this training would actually work. But with a 347% compatibility rating for the heaven-mending needle technique, I had to try something. If sewing didn't unlock his potential, I'd just have to find another way. One step at a time. I shook my head to clear the stray thoughts from my mind. I needed to focus. I opened the timer app on my phone, sat down in my office, and began my daily meditation. I closed my eyes and relaxed, guiding the energy through my meridians to keep my cultivation healthy. A moment later, I felt it. A thin, thread-like wisp of energy moved through my body. It was slow and steady. It took 10 minutes just to travel from my lower dantian to the crown of my head. It took another 10 minutes to reach the base of my spine and return to its starting point. One small cycle was finally complete. I opened my eyes and stopped the timer. Nearly half an hour for a single cycle. My shirt was soaked with sweat. I let out a bitter laugh. My martial arts talent really was mediocre. The national average for a small cycle was 21 minutes. I was 7 minutes behind. Another day of dragging down the national statistics. I realized then that my only hope for a better life, for a future where I could marry a beautiful Valkyrie and return home in glory, was to teach these students well. If they succeeded, the system would let me change my fate. I turned to my computer and began studying the heaven-mending needle technique I had copied. I needed to be prepared. I had to create a training plan for Zhu Tao that was both efficient and logical. Before I knew it, night had fallen. At the 3rd Martial Arts High School, the staff and student dorms were in the same area. Everyone had private rooms to ensure a quiet environment for meditation. Most students spent their nights consolidating their training. Class 5 was the exception. As soon as they got back to the dorms, they gathered to play video games. Cultivation? Forget it. They couldn't remember the last time they had actually practiced. Reality had beaten them down long ago. Most people get back up when they fall, but the kids in Class 5 just stayed on the ground. They figured moving was useless anyway. Even with their family's massive resources, they were stuck at the 8th rank martial spirit realm. They knew they were the discarded children of their clans. No one cared about them, so they decided to enjoy life instead. The whole group was currently crowded into Li Yiming's room. "Where's Tao?" someone asked, eyes glued to his screen. "In his own room," another replied. "He wouldn't come out. Said he was in seclusion and told us to play without him." The group paused, sharing a strange look. What did that guy Sue say to him in the office today? No idea. He won't talk. Li Yiming looked around at the piles of snack wrappers and trash his classmates had left on his floor. His room was a disaster. He felt a surge of rage, but he forced a smile and handed over a trash can. "Brothers, the bin is right here. Throw it in here, please," Li Yiming said. Being at the bottom of the Class 5 social ladder was exhausting. In terms of strength, Li Yiming was top 3. In terms of family background, he was the weakest. He had to swallow his pride even when he got bullied. They always chose his room for parties and always left it a mess. Li Yiming was a germaphobe. He hated litter more than anything. Just you wait, he thought bitterly. Asterisk the world turns. One day, when my leg techniques reach mastery, I'll catch every piece of trash you throw before it even hits the ground. Asterisk. Next door, Zhu Tao was sitting at his desk. He held a needle in his left hand and a thin thread in his right. His phone was propped up, playing a video. "Welcome back, family. Here is a sewing method so easy anyone can do it," the narrator said. "Today we'll cover the basic knot, the flat stitch, and the backstitch." Zhu Tao watched the tutorial with intense focus. He licked the end of the thread and aimed for the needle's eye. To his surprise, it slid through instantly. No struggle at all. This was the first time in his life he had ever tried to mend his own clothes. Within minutes, he had repaired a tear in his shirt. If you didn't look closely, you couldn't even see the seam. He felt a strange, sudden rush of accomplishment. "I thought this would be hard," he muttered. "It's actually pretty easy." Then he paused, looking confused. "Wait, what does sewing have to do with martial arts?" A short while later, I arrived at his dorm as promised. I walked in and saw a pile of torn clothes spread across his desk. I looked around. The room was a bit messy, but it wasn't dirty. It was clear he actually cleaned up after himself. Not bad. Pretty clean, I said. Zhu Tao didn't care about the compliment. What does sewing have to do with needle techniques? I didn't answer immediately. I just walked around the room, inspecting his work with my hands behind my back. Zhu Tao's face darkened when I ignored him. I'm asking you a question. Answer me. Oh, were you talking to me? I asked casually. I seem to remember having a name. Zhu Tao gritted his teeth. Teacher, what is the connection? Sewing requires precision and a delicate touch, I explained. It trains your finger flexibility and coordination. It's the foundation for the needle technique. Zhu Tao rolled his eyes. I'm not switching my primary cultivation, and I'm definitely not practicing two at once. I didn't argue. I sat down and asked, so, how did it feel while you were sewing? How should it feel? He snapped. It was simple. Boringly simple. Is that so? I leaned in. Show me what you finished. Zhu Tao handed me a shirt. I turned it over, checking the sleeves and the collar. I looked up, genuinely puzzled. Where did you sew it? I don't see the repair. Zhu Tao pointed to a spot near the seam. I tucked the thread ends inside when I finished. That's why it's hidden. My expression shifted. Is this really your first time sewing? Obviously. Why would I lie about that? I told you that you had talent, and you didn't believe me. I said, my voice rising with excitement. To reach this level on your first try is incredible. I couldn't do it this well if I tried. This is raw talent, Zhu Tao. I wasn't lying. His compatibility with the heaven-mending needle technique was off the charts. It was like he was a master tailor in a past life. Zhu Tao snorted, clearly thinking I was just trying to manipulate him. Stop blowing smoke. It doesn't mean anything. I'm still not switching techniques. I'm not asking you to switch, I said seriously. I want you to dual cultivate. Keep your dragon coiling fist, but add the heaven-mending needle technique. Zhu Tao looked at me like I was crazy. Why do you think I could possibly handle two internal heart methods at once? Do you want the truth or a lie? I asked. The lie. The lie is that you are a once-in-a-10,000-year martial arts genius with the soul of a war god. Zhu Tao's mouth twitched. I knew you were full of it. What's the truth then? The truth is that you have zero martial arts talent, I said bluntly. If you did, given your family's wealth, you wouldn't be stuck at the 8th rank. I'm giving you a choice. You can keep rotting here, wasting your life until you become a nobody. I stood up, my eyes locking onto his. Or, you can trust your teacher. Practice the needles. Give me your trust, and I will give you a future. Zhu Tao gave me the strangest look I had ever seen. Teacher, look at my family. As long as I don't commit a crime or try to start a business, the money my parents left me is enough to live in luxury for several lifetimes. Why wouldn't that be a good future? I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. I almost felt an internal injury from how hard that hit me. I had messed up. I forgot for a second that I was talking to a bunch of incredibly rich kids. These kids were born at the finish line. While most people are born as beasts of burden, struggling just to survive, these students were born in the heart of Rome. Don't you want your family to look up to you? I asked, keeping my voice steady and serious. Don't you want them to be proud? If you could actually get into the National Defense Martial Arts University, your name would get its own dedicated page in the family genealogy records. Zhu Tao looked at me like I had lost my mind. The National Defense University? I'd be lucky to even get into a regular college, and you're talking about the top martial arts school in the country? You're dreaming bigger than I am, and I don't even dream about that place. He shook his head. That university was the ultimate goal for every martial artist in Huaxiao, a dream almost impossible to reach. Teacher Su, stop feeding me fairy tales. I'm not buying it, and I'm not interested. I felt a wave of helplessness. The kid was like a stone wall. No matter how much I tried to spoon-feed him a better future, he just wouldn't swallow. I realized I couldn't rush this. I had to play the long game. Fine, I said, placing a small USB drive on his desk. The cultivation method for the heaven-mending needle is on here. I've already copied it for you. If you're interested, take a look. If not, do whatever you want with it. I turned toward the door. Keep sewing that clothing. I'll be back every day to check your progress. Zhu Tao grunted a response. As soon as I walked out, I saw him staring intensely at the USB drive, lost in thought. As I walked back to my own dormitory, I replayed our conversation in my head. When I mentioned his parents, his mood had clearly plummeted. But when I mentioned the family genealogy, I saw a flicker of desire. It seemed no martial artist could resist the lure of being the pride of their clan. I didn't know much about Zhu Tao's background, only that he came from the Donghai Zhu family. They were a massive martial arts clan, and their current leader was a fifth-rank martial king, a top-tier powerhouse in the city. The family was full of young geniuses, most of whom attended Donghai First Martial Arts High School. That was the best school in the city, where the minimum requirement for admission was the 7th rank Martial Mysterious Realm. To reach the 7th rank by age 15 or 16 made you a dragon among men. With the same resources, Zhu Tao had only managed to reach the 8th rank Martial Spirit Realm. Even then, he was only at the middle stage of the 8th rank, nowhere near the peak. The gap between him and the geniuses of his family was a canyon. But I had seen his hands. They were covered in old calluses and scars. Those marks proved that at some point, he had worked himself to the bone trying to catch up. He wanted their recognition more than he let on. Back in the dorm, Zhu Tao was struggling. My words had poked a hole in his apathy. Curiously, he finally plugged the USB drive into his laptop and opened the file. He scanned the text. It looked basic, insultingly basic. Compared to his family's dragon-coiling fist, this looked like a joke. He read it over and over, trying to find a hidden secret, but he found nothing. He had seen hidden weapon techniques before, and this was no different. In fact, it was less detailed than most. The whole manual could be summarized in one sentence. Use the needle as a guide and the energy as the thread. The strangest part was the training method. It required the user to guide their breath to control a needle and sew clothes continuously. It claimed that after 3 years of practice, one would achieve basic mastery. Zhu Tao slammed his hand on the desk in a rage. Sewing until I graduate. Is he serious? That damn Sue is definitely playing me. He imagined the college entrance exams. While other students brought swords, spears, and axes, he would be walking into the arena with a sewing kit. He looked at the screen again. Despite his anger, he remembered my expression. I had looked sincere. Besides, a class teacher like me would definitely know his family background. I wouldn't dare mess with the Zhu family unless I had a death wish. If something went wrong with him, I'd be the one paying the price. Plus, I had demonstrated the 6th level of the 9 refinement body technique earlier. Someone with that kind of mastery wouldn't waste time on a garbage technique, right? Zhu Tao weighed the pros and cons. Suddenly, a memory flashed in his mind, the cold, disappointed voices of his elders. We wasted so many resources on you. Even a pig would have reached the 8th rank by now. You're a waste of space. If you didn't carry the Zhu name, we would have kicked you out long ago. You're an embarrassment to the family. Zhu Tao's eyes turned cold, and his fists clenched until his knuckles turned white. Fine. I don't have any other options anyway. Teacher Sue, I'll trust you this once. He sat cross-legged on his bed, cleared his mind, and began to follow the instructions. Dual cultivating required him to first pull all his existing energy back into his dantian, isolating it so it wouldn't interfere with the new technique. It was a painful, grueling process. Within minutes, sweat poured down his face. His abdomen felt like it was being pierced by hot needles. He had read online that suppressing your internal energy felt like a dull ache, but this was sharp and agonizing. He gritted his teeth and endured it. Once the dragon coiling energy was fully suppressed, he began the first stage of the heaven-mending needle. 30 minutes passed in what felt like a blink. When Zhu Tao opened his eyes and checked the clock, he froze. What the hell, he whispered. It's only been half an hour? He felt a faint, distinct thread of energy forming in his body. It was completely different from his family's technique. The dragon coiling energy was aggressive and domineering, but this new energy was soft, flexible, and precise. When he had first learned his family's technique, it took him a full month just to feel a spark of energy. Was this new technique just that low level? Or was it because he already had a foundation? It didn't make sense to be this fast. The stinging in his gut grew sharper. He didn't have time to overthink. He closed his eyes again, guiding the soft energy through his meridians. He had to move fast, or the pain from suppressing his old energy would become unbearable. A few moments later, he opened his eyes again, looking completely stunned. It's done. Following the manual, he guided the new energy through a full cycle. Normally, New energy is weak and nearly impossible to control. It usually takes weeks of practice just to complete one full circuit without the energy dissipating. But Zhu Tao had done it on his very first try. It was so smooth, so effortless, that he actually started to wonder if he really was a martial arts genius. Holy crap, he muttered, staring at his hands. Do I actually have a talent for needle techniques? How did Teacher Su know? To Zhu Tao, my image was shifting from an annoying teacher to something much more mysterious. Zhu Tao couldn't suppress the excitement surging through him. As he circulated the energy of the heaven-mending cloud embroidery technique for the 10th time, the sensation became incredibly intense. He realized that while dual cultivation was notoriously difficult, its early-stage advantages were massive. His meridians had already been tempered by his family's technique, and his primary energy channels were wide open. He didn't have to break new ground. The energy just flowed. But there was a side effect. His body was using its own physical reserves to nourish this new energy, and a wave of intense hunger hit him like a truck. He scrambled to the mini-fridge, grabbed a bag of nutrient solution, and tore it open, gulping it down in seconds. These solutions were designed to provide massive amounts of energy and satiety for martial artists, yet one bag barely scratched the surface. He kept going, his heart racing with adrenaline. The hunger was a good sign. It meant the energy was growing and demanding fuel. By the time he had drained 10 full bags of nutrient solution, the sensation in his body became crystal clear. He could feel the energy dancing through his meridians with perfect clarity. He had officially mastered the basics of the mental technique. He checked the time. 3 hours and 26 minutes. Less than 4 hours to reach the entry level. Zhu Tao muttered, his voice trembling. Even with my channels already open, this is freaking ridiculous. For a moment, he was actually too scared to continue. In the world of martial arts, there were no shortcuts. Even geniuses had to grind. If energy grew too fast, it usually meant the foundation was unstable, which was a death sentence for a warrior's future. Then he stopped and laughed at himself. Wait, what am I worried about? My foundation is already trashed. To force his way through previous ranks, he had overdosed on body-tempering liquids and pills, ruining his potential years ago. He had nothing left to lose. With a determined look, he began guiding the energy toward his right hand. His thumb and index finger began to throb with a dull ache, twitching uncontrollably. This was it, the first stage of the technique, the curved needle. Across campus in the teacher's dormitory, I was burning the midnight oil, drafting a training plan for Zhu Tao. Suddenly, a jolt of incredibly pure energy slammed into my body. What the? I gasped as the energy started racing through me like a wild horse. I immediately sat cross-legged on my bed, entering a meditative state to guide the rogue power into my meridians. It was so pure that I didn't even need to process it. The moment it touched my own energy, they fused instantly. My internal energy, which had been as thin as a silk thread, began to thicken rapidly. The stubborn bottleneck that had kept me stuck at the peak of the 9th rank practitioner level started to crack. Where did this windfall come from? I wondered. I quickly summoned the system and pulled up Zhu Tao's profile. Name, Zhu Tao. Age, 16. Realm, 8th rank practitioner. Current technique, Dragon Coiling Fist, 27% compatibility. New technique, Heaven Mending Cloud Embroidery Needle, 347% compatibility. Status, Foundation unstable, Technique conflict, Cultivation efficiency decreased. New trait, Technique fanatic, triggered at 300% plus compatibility. Effect, massive boost to cultivation efficiency and focus. Current efficiency, 237%. I grinned. The kid said he didn't want it, but his body sure is being honest. This was the beauty of my system. Every bit of progress my students made was fed back to me as pure energy. I didn't have to eat, train, or digest pills. I just had to teach. Zhu Tao's sudden obsession had given me the push I needed. If he kept this up, I'd hit the 8th rank martial spirit realm in no time. That meant a 500 yuan raise in my base salary. It might not sound like much, but over the years, that adds up to a fortune. Still, I couldn't get complacent. Dual cultivation is tricky, and I needed to make sure Zhu Tao didn't blow himself up. I had to keep a close eye on him. The next morning at 7:30 a.m., The rest of the school was buzzing. Every other class was out on the field for morning meditation, soaking up the early morning spiritual energy, the golden hour for martial artists. But when I walked into the Class 5 classroom, it was a ghost town. Are you kidding me? I sighed, looking at the empty desks. They're not even trying anymore. Morning training is the foundation of everything. It's when the body is most receptive to the world's energy. As their teacher, I couldn't let them rot like this. Most of them had the disheartened status, which dragged their efficiency into the negatives. I needed to get them moving. My first instinct was to storm the dorms and drag them out of bed by their ears. But I stopped myself. That would just make them hate me more. If I forced them, they'd just lock their doors or stare at the wall in spite. I needed a better plan. I needed them to want to be here. I sat in my office, watching the classroom through the window. It wasn't until nearly 9 a.m. that students started trickling in, looking like zombies. Zhu Tao didn't show up until 10:30. Tao, why so late today? One of the kids asked. Zhu Tao looked embarrassed. He couldn't exactly tell them he'd spent the entire night obsessively sewing clothes like a madman, because the technique felt too good to stop. Just gaming, he lied, yawning. Nobody questioned it. They only showed up because the school jammed the internet signal in the dorms during class hours. If they could have stayed in bed and scrolled through their phones, they would have. Once I was sure everyone was finally present, I stepped into the room. The atmosphere turned cold immediately. They didn't yell or throw things. They just looked at me with pure, unfiltered indifference. It was going to be a long day. Zhu Tao looked at me with a complicated expression, but he didn't say a word. There was no way he was going to admit he had already started practicing the heaven-mending needle technique I gave him. He was hooked, even if he wouldn't show it. I walked into the training area, hands behind my back, looking annoyed. I let out a heavy sigh as I approached the group. If you guys aren't going to show up for morning training, you should have told me sooner, I said, my voice dripping with fake frustration. I dragged myself out of bed at 6:30 this morning for nothing. I could have used that extra sleep. The students stared at me, stunned. They expected a lecture or a punishment, not a complaint about my sleep schedule. How can a lazy trash teacher like you even talk about training? One of them sneered. I didn't get angry. I just gave them a thin, knowing smile. Why do you think the school put me in charge of Class 5? We're a perfect match. I walked to the center of the open field and stopped. Since you're all here anyway, let's play a game. Li Yiming rolled his eyes. Another trap? No thanks. It's simple, I said, shrugging. I'll stand right here. You can use any weapon you want. If anyone can make me take a single step back, you never have to come to morning training again. I'll even cover for you when the school inspectors come by. You can sleep in as much as you want. The atmosphere shifted. The students exchanged looks. And if we can't move you, someone asked. Then nothing happens. No punishment. It sounded too good to be true. A girl with a massive spiked mace stepped forward, a savage grin on her face. The others didn't stop her. They knew I had some kind of high-level defensive cultivation, but they wanted to see just how much I could take. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. My system was active, but my instincts were screaming at me to move. I forced myself to stay still. The girl didn't attack from the front. She blurred, circling behind me with surprising speed, and swung that heavy mace straight at the back of my skull. Clang. The impact was heavy, but the force didn't penetrate. It felt like the energy was simply drained away the moment it touched me. She growled, swinging again and again, pouring all her strength into the strikes. Nothing. I didn't budge an inch. Finally, she stopped, cursing under her breath as she dragged her mace away. Forget it. There's no impact. It's like hitting a mountain that swallows your strength. I opened my eyes, my heart racing even though I looked calm. It had been terrifying to just stand there and take it, but the result was perfect. I looked at the rest of the class. Anyone else? They just stared. They weren't stupid. They knew they couldn't move me. Do you want to know how I got this body? I asked, raising an eyebrow. The students looked skeptical, but I could see the curiosity in their eyes. I have a special body tempering method, I said, my voice serious. Any level can learn it. No requirements. If you follow my way, you can reach my level of defense in just 3 years. The deal is simple. Anyone who has a perfect attendance record for morning training for 1 month. I'll teach them the first stage. They burst out laughing. 3 years? A garbage technique like that? No thanks. You're full of it, Sue. Nobody's falling for that. I didn't argue. I just turned around and walked back to my office. I wasn't worried. I knew how this worked. I had dangled the carrot. Now I just had to wait for someone to get hungry enough to bite. This was a classic divide-and-conquer strategy. Class 5 was a united front right now, but if even 1 or 2 students started showing up for training, that unity would crack. Once there's a crack, the whole wall eventually falls. Education is just another form of psychological warfare. Back in the classroom, Zhu Tao sighed. He actually believed me. He'd already felt how fast he was progressing with the needle technique I'd given him, so he knew I wasn't a fraud. But he thought I was being naive. He thought these elite kids were too smart to fall for such a basic trick. Li Yiming was the loudest voice in the room. He thinks we're 3 years old. 3 years to master a defense like that with no requirements? Even phone scammers have better scripts than that. He's just trying to break our trust. Stay united, everyone. Don't let him win. If anyone shows up for training, Li Yiming added, his eyes scanning the room, they're a traitor. We'll treat them like a dog. The class cheered in agreement. Li Yiming smiled, but inside, his mind was racing. He had seen my power firsthand. He knew exactly how terrifying that defense was. In his family, he was a nobody, a shadow in the corner who had no say in anything. If he could master a technique like that in 3 years, he'd finally have a seat at the table. But he couldn't let them see him fold. He knew how cruel Class 5 could be to their own. If they caught him training, they wouldn't kill him, but they'd make his life a living hell. And he wasn't sure I could protect him. That night, Li Yiming tossed and turned in his dorm room. He weighed the risks over and over. By dawn, he had made his choice. He was going to do it. He would show up for training and hope the others stayed in bed long enough that they wouldn't notice. If he got caught, he'd just have to take the beatings until his defense was strong enough to fight back. He was an 8th-rank martial artist with top-tier leg techniques. If things got bad, he could always run. He set his alarm for 7 a.m. He didn't sleep a single wink for the rest of the night. Li Yiming tossed and turned, unable to catch a single wink of sleep. As the sky outside began to pale with the first hints of dawn, he finally gave up. He threw on his clothes and crept out of his room, moving like a thief in the night. The hallways were already filling up with students heading to their early morning classes. Li Yiming ducked his head, weaving through the crowd and blending in as best he could. He was terrified of being spotted by anyone from Class 5. If they saw him out this early, the secret would be out. He made it out of the dorm area and looked up at the horizon. The sun hadn't even broken the tree line yet. He felt a bit dazed. He couldn't even remember the last time he'd been awake for a morning practice. But then he thought about the reward. 1 month of morning exercise in exchange for a top-tier defensive technique? It was a steal. His excitement gave him a burst of energy, and he practically flew toward the classroom. When he arrived, I was already standing by the door. "Teacher Sue," he panted, his voice trembling with a mix of exhaustion and hope. Do you keep your word?" I blinked at him and smiled. "Of course I do." "Fine," he said, nodding firmly. "I'm here for morning practice." "Good," I replied. "I was just waiting for you." Li Yiming froze. "Waiting for me? What do you mean?" "The others got here before 6 a.m., I said, checking my watch. "You're the last one." Li Yiming felt like a complete clown. His jaw dropped. "They're already here? Are they even human?" He felt totally betrayed. He had spent all night agonizing over being a traitor, only to find out he was the latecomer. He turned on his heel and stormed into the classroom, ready to give them a piece of his mind. Inside, the rest of Class 5 was already sitting in neat rows, eyes closed, meditating in perfect silence. Zhu Tao was sitting closest to the door. He cracked one eye open as Li Yiming approached. "You're finally here," Zhu Tao muttered. Li Yiming gave a stiff, awkward laugh. "I'm here, Brother Tao. I feel terrible. I broke our promise to stay united. I'm a dog for this. From now on, just call me the Tibetan Mastiff of Class 5. Li Yiming nearly choked on his own breath. What was happening? He looked at the student next to him, who didn't even open his eyes. "Human Husky, checking in," the boy whispered. "Human Samoyed here," said another. "Alaskan Malamute. Schnauzer." A girl in the back didn't even look up. "I'm a Chihuahua. My friend next to me is a Pomeranian." Li Yiming was losing his mind. They weren't just training. They were assigning themselves dog breeds to pay for their betrayal. He scrambled to find an empty seat and sat down cross-legged. "What's left?" he hissed. Fine, fine. I'm a human teddy bear. Let's just do this." With his pride officially gone, he closed his eyes and began to meditate. I stood at the door, watching them. Hearing a room full of elite, rebellious students call themselves huskies and poodles was one of the strangest things I'd ever witnessed. I decided it was best not to go inside and ruin the moment. Once I was sure they were all focused, I headed back to my office. I wanted to give them some space. They were a bunch of tsunderas, acting like they hated me while doing exactly what I asked. Back at my desk, I laughed to myself. My plan to divide and conquer had failed, but in the best way possible. There weren't any hard bones in that class willing to fight me to the death after all. Everyone showing up for practice meant my attendance rates were perfect. That was the hard metric my supervisor, Lu Jun, had set for me. Managing Class 5 wasn't just about stopping them from causing trouble. It was about making them act like a real class. I was finally on the right track. Word traveled fast. Other teachers passing by the classroom stopped and stared as if they'd seen a ghost. In the 2 weeks since the semester started, Class 5 had never shown up for morning practice. Now, the whole room was full. "I can't believe it," one older teacher whispered in the hall. "Young Su really has a way with them." "I knew he was special when he covered my general ed classes," another added. "He's only 27. The age gap isn't that big, so it's easier for him to talk to them than it is for us old folks." "True, but Lu Jun is going to have a headache," a third teacher chimed in. "There's no way he's getting that body-tempering liquid approved for a class like this." They weren't wrong. At that very moment, Lu Jun was in his own office, staring at his desk and wondering if he should seasoning it before he started eating it. He had made a bet that I couldn't handle these kids, and he had lost. He couldn't wrap his head around it. These kids were rebels to the bone. I was a new teacher with zero management experience. How did I pull it off? But questioning it didn't change the facts. He had made a promise, and as a leader, he couldn't back down. It would ruin his reputation with the entire faculty. The problem was the body-tempering liquid itself. It wasn't something you could just grab off a shelf. I didn't have the seniority to qualify for it, having only worked for 2.5 years. Lu Jun sat there, face clouded with worry, wondering if swallowing a marble table would actually be easier than getting that paperwork through. I had no idea my boss was contemplating a diet of stone. I was preoccupied with Zhu Tao. For the past 2 days, I'd been buried in research about dual cultivation, the art of practicing 2 different techniques at once. The more I read, the more worried I got. Trying to run 2 different types of energy through the body without them clashing was nearly impossible. If you think of energy as a car, the human meridians are like a narrow, 1-lane road. You can't have 2 cars driving in the same lane at the same time. There were only 2 ways to make it work. The first was to widen the road, physically expanding the meridians. But you could only do that if you were at the 6th rank, possessing a body of steel and bone to survive the excruciating pain. If Zhu Tao tried that now, he'd explode. The second way was to compress the energy. It was like shrinking 2 cars into 2 bicycles so they could fit side by side. This required insane levels of control and years of practice. Usually, only legendary geniuses could pull it off. I knew Zhu Tao had the talent. He had mastered the basics of the needle technique in just 4 hours. Every student has a hidden gift, they just need the right direction. I was sure he could handle the energy from the heaven-mending needle technique. The real problem was his original technique, the coiling dragon fist. The needle technique was yin, cold and soft. The fist technique was yang, hot and aggressive. They were total opposites. My research showed that almost no one attempted to dual-wield conflicting attributes. They always picked 2 of the same kind. As his teacher, I had put him on this path. I couldn't let him wander like a blind man. I had to find a way for him to control that aggressive dragon fist energy before it clashed with the needles and tore him apart from the inside. I didn't have a single ounce of talent when it came to modifying cultivation methods. Changing a core mental law was unrealistic, and I definitely didn't have the skill to warp a fiery, aggressive technique like the coiling dragon fist into something soft and cold just to match the heaven-mending needles. Besides, that fist technique was a guarded family secret. If I went poking around in their private business, Zhu Tao's family would probably try to silence me for good. The system wasn't helping me here either. I was on my own. Luckily, I was a graduate of a martial arts teacher's college, and my foundation in theory was rock solid. The ancient texts said yin and yang were two sides of the same coin. They could clash, but they could also merge. I just needed to figure out how. I quickly logged into the East Sea Martial Arts University's online thesis library. I remembered reading something about this back when I was a student. I typed in a few keywords and hit search. A paper popped up, a brief discussion on the fusion of yin and yang qi. It was written 12 years ago by a graduate who was now a fifth-rank martial king. Back then, it was just a graduation thesis, so it wasn't incredibly deep, but the theory was there. The author argued that the essence of yin-yang fusion was chaos qi, a type of energy that could harmonize any conflicting mental laws. It was a one-size-fits-all solution. The only problem? It was purely theoretical. The author hadn't even found a way to practice it himself. I couldn't let Zhu Tao be the guinea pig. The risk of him exploding was too high. I looked at the screen, a plan forming in my mind. I had to experiment on myself. Several students in Class 5 practiced yin-attributed techniques, while my 9 refinement body was pure yang. If I could get them to attack me with enough force, their yin energy would seep into my body. With my invincible teacher system protecting me from actual damage, I could use my own body as a laboratory. If I actually pulled this off and published the results, I'd be famous. By the end of the year, the principal could just retire and give me his seat. I could see it now. I'm Su Yuan. Principal, please step down. Back in the classroom, morning practice had ended. The students were still sitting in their meditation poses, eyes closed, trying to look serious. But these kids weren't the type to sit still for long. After 10 minutes, someone finally cracked. Look, I didn't even plan on coming to morning practice. One student grumbled, eyes still shut. But the hallway was so noisy I couldn't sleep. I figured since I was up, I'd go to the cafeteria. Then, I somehow ended up at the classroom door. I thought, since I'm here, I might as well sit down and eat my breakfast. Next thing I know, I get a burst of inspiration, I close my eyes, and boom, I'm meditating. I have no idea who moved me into this position. The room stayed silent. Nobody believed that garbage story. It would take a decade of brain damage to come up with something that pathetic. Let me just clarify. Zhu Tao suddenly spoke up. I'm only here because I lost a bet. Teacher Su forced me. A man has to keep his word, so I'm here under duress. It's definitely not because I want to learn the 6th level of the 9 refinement body. All right, stop explaining. Another student snapped, finally opening his eyes. Let's be real. It's not that we couldn't resist the temptation. It's just that Teacher Su offered too much. Mastering the immovable state in 3 years? Who could say no to that? I have a suggestion, someone else whispered. We do the morning practice, but that doesn't mean we've surrendered. Let's skip the general theory class collectively. That's our final stand. Yeah, he only told us to show up for morning practice. He didn't say anything about the lecture. Let's bail. I can't stand looking at his smug face anyway. When I showed up for the lecture later that morning, the room was empty. They had actually done it. They went on strike. Bunch of idiots, I muttered, rolling my eyes. I knew they were just being stubborn and prideful. I didn't really care about the theory class anyway. It only accounted for 20% of their college entrance score. The real meat was in martial combat and beast defense. In beast defense, you had to face actual monsters. Sometimes you had to kill them. Sometimes you had to protect a facility, and the hardest ones involved protecting hostages. During my own exam, the hostage was a grumpy old lady who insisted on walking across the street at a snail's pace while a monster was charging at us. If I left her, I failed. If I didn't help her, she'd scream. Given the temper of my current students, they'd probably try to ride the old lady across the street like a getaway horse. Since they weren't in class, there were only 2 places they could be, the dorms or the cafeteria. I needed them to help me test the chaos chi theory, so I headed straight for the food hall. Sure enough, I found all 10 of them huddled around a table, shoveling food into their mouths like they hadn't eaten in weeks. Slow down, I said, pulling up a chair. Nobody's going to steal it. You're literally biting the plates. Watch your image. What image? One of them mumbled through a mouthful of rice. Martial artists needed massive amounts of calories. They could drink nutrition shakes, but those tasted like chalk. Real food was always better. When they saw me sit down, they all froze. Relax, I said. I'm not here to bust you for skipping class. Then what do you want? Zhu Tao asked suspiciously. I need a favor. I want you all to hit me. Use your full strength. Don't hold back. The girl with the spiked club stared at me, her cheeks bulging with food. You're a total masochist, aren't you? That's weird. No way. We're not stupid, another added. You're trying to trick us into going back to class. That'll cost you extra. They went back to eating, completely ignoring me. I knew they wouldn't cooperate if I asked nicely. I stood up and walked over to their table. I looked at the spread of food, reached out, and grabbed a massive handful of mashed potatoes. The table went silent. Everyone stared at my hand. Splat. I smeared the mashed potatoes directly onto the face of the girl with the spiked club. I yelled, then bolted toward the classroom. She screamed, jumping up. Break his legs. That is way too much. A few minutes later, the classroom was a scene of beautiful, violent harmony. The students were swarming me, throwing everything they had. I shouted, dodging a punch. You guys just ate. Where's the power? Use your hidden force. I kept provoking them, pushing them to use their IN-based internal energy. I wasn't sure if my invincible passive would let the energy through or just block it entirely. But suddenly, I felt it. A cold, snake-like wisp of energy bypassed my external defenses and seeped deep into my meridians, starting to run wild. It was working. I wondered if my invincible teacher system could actually generate energy out of thin air. I wasn't sure, but I decided to take a gamble. I opened up my meridians and mentally commanded my body to let all that cold, violent IN energy inside. A massive flood of IN energy surged into me, rampaging through my veins like a wild beast. I didn't panic. I used my internal strength to force it down, compressing the entire mess into my dantian. It was an incredibly reckless move. In the martial arts world, this was basically suicide, like stuffing a live grenade into your core. But I felt absolutely nothing. No pain, no explosion. For 10 minutes, the students of Class 5 threw everything they had at me. Eventually, they realized I was just standing there, completely unfazed. Their morale shattered. I give up. This is so annoying. The girl with the spiked club shouted, slamming her weapon onto the floor in frustration. She had been bashing the back of my head for 10 minutes straight and didn't feel a single bit of impact. The rest of the students were gasping for air, their faces red with exertion. They had pushed themselves to the limit, yet I hadn't even moved a single inch from my spot. I felt a sudden chill on my back. I reached behind me and realized my shirt was gone. My mouth twitched. Fighting is one thing, but stripping your teacher? That's crossing a line. I'd have to remember that for later. I beat a hasty retreat to the faculty dorms to change. My dantian was now packed with enough stolen IN energy to run a lifetime of experiments. Normally, having this much foreign, aggressive energy inside you would mean instant death. But thanks to my passive ability, the damage was neutralized. These destructive forces were now my puppets. I sat cross-legged on my bed and began the trial. First, I pulled a tiny wisp of IN energy from my dantian and forced it into my meridians, trying to make it circulate alongside my own yang energy. The IN energy refused to cooperate. It bolted around like a panicked snake. Even though I knew I couldn't be hurt, my heart hammered against my ribs. Anyone else doing this would have exploded by now. The research papers I'd read didn't have a manual for this. They only theorized that chaos chi existed. I had to find the way myself. My goal was to fuse the two opposite energies back into their primal, chaotic state. Half an hour passed. Dozens of attempts, and 0 results. The two energies didn't mix. In fact, they interfered with each other so much that my normal cultivation cycle became nearly impossible. I needed a new plan. Maybe a speed difference? One in front, one behind. I tried again. Yang in the lead, IN following. Controlling 2 different flows was exhausting. My head started to throb. I paused to chug a pouch of nutrient solution to get my energy back, then dove back in. 2 hours later, I finally managed one full cycle with both energies. Still, there was no fusion. I figured I just needed more repetitions. The sun began to set. My stash of captured IN energy was almost gone. I sat slumped at my desk, staring at a pile of scratch paper covered in notes, times, and results. If a normal martial artist saw these notes, their skin would crawl. Every single method I had tried was a different way to commit suicide. I counted the attempts, 71. If not for my system, I would have died 71 times today. I leaned back, deep in thought. I tried observation and intervention. Maybe chaos chi couldn't be formed through normal methods. But I knew it was real. Archaeologists had found ancient corpses that still radiated pressure, containing a unique energy that was neither yin nor yang, but could hold both. It was the ultimate mystery of the martial arts world. Wait, extreme methods. A spark lit up in my mind. When I was looking for a manual for Zhu Tao, I saw records of extreme, ancient cultivation styles. Modern methods are safe and balanced, but I was trying to create something primordial. I needed to think like a madman from the ancient era. I searched the internal network for the most insane theories I could find. Finally, my eyes locked onto a concept that most people considered a joke: energy collision. It was simple and stupid. You run the two energies in opposite directions through the same meridian and let them smash into each other. It was pure, unadulterated madness. But for me, it was a breakthrough. I drank another nutrient pouch, settled my breathing, and prepared. I carefully balanced the strength of my own yang energy with the stolen yin energy. Then, I let them loose. They charged at each other and collided with a violent bang. In that instant, I felt a massive surge of power. It didn't hurt, but it felt like my meridians were being inflated like a tire. They were stretching. My eyes snapped open, filled with joy. I wasn't just fusing energy, I was expanding my meridians. This was huge. Expanding your meridians is the ultimate bottleneck. Usually, only a 6th-rank grandmaster with a body of steel can even attempt it, and even then, they need incredibly rare and expensive drugs to survive the process. Without wider meridians, you eventually hit a ceiling where your energy outgrows your body. But here I was, doing it through sheer violence and a lucky passive skill. I wasn't just teaching anymore. I was about to take off. The shockwaves from the energy collisions were expanding my meridians, but I knew this method was only for me. It required a very specific ingredient, the yin energy I'd siphoned from my rebellious students in Class 5. If anyone else tried this, they'd be signing their own death warrant. I was ecstatic. I was only at the peak of the 9th rank, yet I was already expanding my meridians. This was unheard of. In every textbook and online database I'd searched, there was no record of this happening before the 6th rank. I had officially become a pioneer, doing what no one else in history had achieved. I felt so powerful I wanted to call the director of education and tell him to step down so I could take his job. Inside my body, the yin and yang energies continued to clash. Each collision made my meridians swell, followed by an incredible sense of relief. It felt like a narrow country road was being paved over and widened into a multi-lane highway. It was pure bliss. But as I drifted in that feeling, the swelling suddenly stopped. I snapped back to reality and checked my internal state. The two clashing forces had ceased their war. In fact, they were vanishing. Panic flared in my chest. Experiments are dangerous, and I worried I'd just crippled my own cultivation path. But then, my eyes went wide. At the center of where the two energies had met, a new, strange mist had appeared. It was gray and mysterious. Chaos energy. I watched, mesmerized, as this new energy acted like a vacuum, sucking in every scrap of my original yang energy and the student's yin energy. It grew larger and more stable with every passing second. This was the ultimate breakthrough, life born from the verge of death. Once it had consumed everything, the chaos energy began to circulate through my body on its own. I swallowed hard and decided to test it. I activated the second level of my cultivation technique, bronze bone. I guided the chaos energy into my arms and slammed my fist down onto my desk. A heavy, muffled thud echoed through the room. When I lifted my hand, the solid wood was spiderwebbed with deep cracks. It worked. Not only was the chaos energy compatible with my techniques, but it amplified their power significantly. It was a universal fuel, more potent than anything I'd ever felt. My joy was cut short by a sudden, violent wave of hunger. My stomach cramped so hard I broke into a cold sweat. My hands started shaking. I lunged for the fridge and grabbed a nutrient pouch, downing it in seconds. No change. I grabbed a second, then a third. I didn't stop until I drained all 20 pouches in the fridge. The shaking stopped, but the hunger remained. For a martial artist, this kind of hunger is a beautiful sign. It means the body is growing at a massive rate. That's when I realized my bottleneck was gone. I had broken through to the 8th rank, the martial spirit realm, without even noticing. I realized the chaos energy was the reason my power felt so much higher than a standard 8th rank. I didn't have time to overthink it, though. I needed real food. I sprinted to the cafeteria and ate enough to feed a small army. Back in my dorm, I felt like a new man. With my expanded meridians and the chaos energy flowing through me, I finally had a ticket to become a true powerhouse. But there was a catch. I realized that keeping this engine running was going to be expensive. The more my meridians grew, the more energy they required. I did the math. My base salary was $7,000, plus a small bonus for being a class monitor. After taxes and insurance, I was pulling in about $8,000 a month. But between the food and the extra nutrients I'd need, I was looking at spending nearly $400 a day just to stay fed. My savings would last me maybe a year if I was careful. I needed a plan. I had to visit my old university to get the manual for the 3rd level of my technique. If I could reach the 7th rank, I'd be qualified to become a monster hunter. That was where the real money was. I could do commissions on the weekends to fund my appetite. First things first, I destroyed all my notes from the experiment. If anyone saw these, they'd think I was trying to commit suicide. Even though I'd succeeded, I couldn't write a thesis on this. To get chaos energy, you basically have to try to blow yourself up and hope you survive. It's not exactly a repeatable lesson for the average student. I looked at the roster for Class 5 with a new perspective. They weren't just annoying kids anymore. They were my batteries. Not only did the system give me rewards for teaching them, but I could now literally absorb their excess energy to fuel my own growth. However, I still had a problem. My own growth didn't help Zhu Tao. I considered trying to transfer some of my chaos energy to him to jumpstart his cultivation, but I knew that was impossible. Energy is unique to the individual. If I forced my energy into his body, his system would treat it like a foreign invader and attack it. I had to find another way to get him through the initial stages of his dual cultivation manual. I decided to reach out to some old college friends who specialized in those types of techniques. I needed expert advice, and fast. I thought about finding a job at a factory, but my hand speed was way faster than any assembly line worker. That was just a joke, of course, but it proved one thing. Choosing a dual cultivation manual was a terrible idea. I reached out to my old college classmates who had tried it. Every single one of them told me the same thing. They regretted it deeply. Sure, having 2 sets of techniques gives you an advantage at the lower levels because you have more tricks up your sleeve. But as time goes on, that advantage turns into a nightmare. You end up chasing 2 rabbits and catching neither. Both techniques stall out, your progress hits a wall, and without strength or a powerful background, your future is basically non-existent. Still, I managed to gather some useful notes on how they survived as long as they did. I was surprised by what I found. Most people used the compression method, but that required insane levels of breath control that most students simply couldn't handle. The differential speed method I'd used in my experiment was actually the most common path. You let both energies circulate through your system at the same time, but you keep them at different speeds so they don't collide. The tricky part was that the speed difference changed depending on the manual and your cultivation level. You had to constantly adjust it to prevent an internal rear-end collision that would blow your meridians apart. I carefully summarized everything I learned, added my own insights from my successful experiment, and waited for morning. After the early training session ended, I called Zhu Tao into my office. He walked in with that same arrogant posture, leaning against my desk like a prisoner of war who refused to break. He wouldn't even call me teacher yet. I wasn't worried. These things take time. I pulled out the notebook I'd prepared and held it out. Take this. Zhu Tao frowned, glancing at the cover. He snorted. What is this? I told you. I'm not doing dual cultivation. I don't need it. I stared at him. This kid was as stubborn as a mule. Look, whether you're doing it or not, I've got eyes. Just take it. Consider it a backup plan. I kept my voice flat, acting like I didn't care. If you ever change your mind, you'll need this. I don't want people saying I'm a teacher who doesn't look after his students. Zhu Tao lifted his chin, acting like he was doing me a favor. Fine. Since you're being so insistent, I'll take it. But I don't like owing people favors. What's the price? He probably expected me to say something cheesy, like, just study hard, or make me proud. Instead, I rattled off a list like a rhythmic poem. A 3-story villa, a rooftop pool, a garden out front, and a convertible in the garage. Zhu Tao didn't skip a beat. Sure, I'll burn them for you at your funeral. That kid definitely had a sharp tongue. Once he left with the notes, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't sure how much it would help, especially since he still wouldn't admit he was practicing the heaven-mending cloud technique. I knew he'd started, but I didn't know how far he'd gotten. I'd just have to be patient. That afternoon, I needed to leave campus. I was heading to the East Sea Martial Arts Association to register my new rank. Now that I was an 8th rank martial spirit, my first priority was getting a pay raise. If I got the paperwork filed before the end of the month, I could see that extra money in my next paycheck. I grabbed my documents and headed to the office of my supervisor, Lu Zhan, to get a leave permit. He looked at the slip and froze. Xiao Su, did you break through? I gave him a modest smile. Yes, I got lucky. I just reached the 8th rank, so I'm going to get it certified. Lu Zhan beamed. This was great news for him. He'd been stressing about how to get me the body-refining fluid I'd been asking for. Everyone knew I'd been stuck at the 9th rank for years, so he assumed I needed the fluid to break the bottleneck. Now that I'd done it on my own, the pressure was off his back. Xiao Su, I've been watching your work with Class 5, Lu Zhan said, his voice dripping with praise. I knew I didn't pick the wrong person. You have incredible potential. You're a rising star in the education world. I blinked. Wait, didn't I volunteer for this job because no one else wanted it? I knew Lu Zhan. When he started piling on the compliments for no reason, it meant he was about to screw me over. You flatter me, supervisor, I said seriously. Don't worry, I'll keep working hard. I'm still determined to get that body-refining fluid. Lu Zhan's smile turned a bit stiff. Right. I have faith in you. Great. Can I have my permit now? As soon as I walked out the door with the signed paper, I smirked. We'd worked together for 2.5 years. I knew his game. He was dangling that fluid like a carrot he never intended to give me. Honestly, with my expanded meridians and chaos energy, I didn't even need it anymore. But I wasn't going to tell him that. I'd keep demanding it, and if he couldn't deliver, I'd use it as leverage to get something else. Maybe I'd finally get that fancy marble desk from his office. I stopped by the classroom one last time to check on the kids. I'm leaving campus for the afternoon, I announced. Practice on your own. If you have questions, wait until I get back. I turned to leave, but the entire class suddenly swarmed the door, blocking my path. Their eyes were wide, their breathing heavy. They looked like a pack of hungry wolves ready to tear me apart. I actually took 2 steps back. What are you doing? You're leaving the school? One of them asked, his voice trembling with excitement. I nodded slowly. Yeah, what? Zhu Tao stepped forward, his arrogant mask slipping for a second. Old Su, give me some face. Take me with you. I promise I won't cause trouble. Teacher Su, another shouted. I'm sorry for being loud before. I'll kneel for you right now if you just take me outside. The girl with the spiked club bit her lip and held it out to me. I'll give you my club. Just let me go out and play for one day. I realized then just how desperate they were. The 3rd Martial Arts High School was a fortress. It was fully enclosed, with everything from supermarkets to hospitals inside. Students only got out on holidays or at the end of the month. Escaping was impossible. The gates were guarded by 6th-rank martial sovereigns sent by the government. Trying to sneak past them was a death wish. To these kids, school wasn't a place of learning. It was a prison. And I was the only one with a key. The opportunity had finally arrived, and the kids in Class 5 weren't about to let it slip away. They threw away every ounce of pride they had. All they wanted was for me to take them outside those school gates. I stood there, completely stunned. I had never seen these rebellious brats act so humble and submissive in my life. But then I thought about it. It made sense. These kids loved to have fun, and the school was a desert when it came to entertainment. Most of the time, the signal in the dorms was jammed. Their phones were basically expensive bricks that could only tell the time. It really was like serving a prison sentence. Still, I couldn't help but feel a little cold. It wasn't my fault they weren't talented enough to get into the first high school. If you end up at the third high school, you deal with the lockdown. I didn't let their begging go to my head, though. I wasn't going to use this to threaten them. That went against my philosophy as a teacher. Instead, I saw this as a golden opportunity to actually build a relationship with these troublemakers. I had to handle this carefully. Taking students off campus was a massive headache. If anything happened to them out there, the responsibility fell entirely on my shoulders. And knowing this group, Trouble was their middle name. I thought for a moment and then held up one finger. I'm only taking one person, I announced. And you have to promise not to cause any drama. If you mess this up, I'm never taking any of you out again. The second the words left my mouth, the kids started rolling up their sleeves. Their eyes burned with a fierce, competitive fire. It looked like they were ready to fight to the death just to be the one to leave. I rolled my eyes at the sudden intensity. Let's keep it fair, I said, stopping the brawl before it started. Rock, paper, scissors. Winner comes with me. By the afternoon, Li Yiming was walking behind me toward the gate, looking incredibly nervous. I glanced back at him, confused. You won the game, didn't you? Why do you look like you're heading to an execution? How can I be happy? Li Yiming muttered, his voice trembling. I wanted to leave, sure, but did you see the looks on their faces when I won? They looked like they wanted to eat me alive. I'm dead when I get back. He shook his head, trying to clear his mind, and hurried his pace. Forget it. Let's just go, old Sue. I haven't seen the outside world in 2 weeks. I can't wait. I blinked. Old Sue. The lure of freedom was so strong he'd already dropped the formalities. We reached the north gate, where a man in his 60s sat cross-legged, eyes closed. He looked like a kindly old grandfather, but even from a distance, I could feel a heavy, suffocating pressure radiating from him. That was the raw power of a 6th-rank martial sovereign. Old Lou, I called out softly. The old man opened one eye, his voice sounding lazy. Little Sue, what's up? As he spoke, his gaze flickered to Li Yiming. The kid jumped like he'd been poked with a hot iron and scrambled to hide behind my back. I'm heading out for a bit, I said, handing over the hall pass Lu Zhan had signed for me. I've got permission. Old Lu glanced at the paper, then shifted his focus back to Li Yiming. This little brat looks familiar. I think I caught him trying to climb the fence once. Li Yiming didn't say a word. He just rubbed his backside instinctively. The gatekeepers knew how to dish out pain without leaving a mark, but a hit from them would make it hurt to sit down for a week. After the whole class had been caught once, none of them dared to try escaping again. I suppressed a smirk, knowing their dark history. I'm taking him with me to run some errands, I explained. Stay safe, old Lu replied. With me acting as the guarantor, he wasn't going to stop us. If something happened outside, it was my problem, not his. A few minutes later, Li Yiming followed me out into the bustling city. His eyes were darting everywhere, taking in the neon signs and the crowds like a caveman seeing fire for the first time. It was pathetic, really. The school had turned him into a total bumpkin. Holy crap, he suddenly blurted out, staring at a woman walking past. Look at that. She's so tall. She looks just like the lead actress in that movie I watched. I instinctively looked where he was pointing. My eyes widened for a split second before I caught myself. Damn it. He almost dragged me right into his gutter. Where? I asked, then cleared my throat loudly. I mean, stop staring, or I'm sending you back right now. Out here, you listen to me. Li Yiming immediately looked away and fell in line. Where are we going, anyway? The Martial Arts Association, I said. He frowned. For what? Stop asking questions and just follow me. Now let's go. Shouldn't we call a cab? He asked. It's a long walk. If we save time, we can explore more. Who said we're walking? I grinned. We're running. Consider it cultivation practice. I wasn't about to tell him I was just trying to save money. Every cent counted. The association wasn't that far anyway, about 10 kilometers. For a martial artist, that was a 10-minute jog. We sprinted through the city, though I made sure we actually stopped at the red lights. Before long, we were standing in front of the Donghai City Martial Arts Association headquarters. I'm going in to handle some business, I told him. Stay right here. Don't move. I'll buy you some oranges when I get back. Li Yiming just waved his hand dismissively. Clearly, This victim of the 9-year compulsory education system didn't get the literary reference. I sighed and headed inside. I knew the place well since the school sent us here for annual checkups. I grabbed a number and waited in line for my realm certification. The process was simple, mostly machine testing, but the security was tight to prevent any cheating. Outside, Li Yiming stretched his arms, breathing in the city air. The sky looked so much bluer out here than it did from behind the school walls. He watched me disappear into the hall and grinned. Do I look like the type to just sit still? He whispered to himself. He took off running toward a nearby milk tea shop. The school only sold healthy drinks, and he had been craving something sugary for weeks. Welcome. What can I get you? The cashier asked. 1 giant bucket of lemon passion fruit. Extra ice, low sugar, he ordered. Then, he had a rare moment of conscience. He decided to get me one too. And another lemon passion fruit. But leave out the passion fruit. And add as much lemon as you possibly can. Make it lethal. When I finally walked out of the association building, I was surprised to see Li Yiming actually waiting for me in a nearby gazebo. You didn't run off? I asked, impressed. Of course not, he said, acting hurt. I just want to get some drinks. I got you a lemon passion fruit. Here, drink it while it's cold. He handed me the cup with a very suspicious, eager smile. You're smiling like a villain, I noted. Teacher, how could you doubt my sincerity? Fine, fine. I wasn't worried about him poisoning me. I took a big gulp. It tasted like nothing. Just cold water. I smacked my lips. I was actually pretty thirsty, so I downed half the cup in one go and set it aside. Li Yiming stared at me, his jaw dropping. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. He had personally asked for a double dose of concentrated lemon powder. It should have been sour enough to turn my face inside out. Teacher. Ew. You don't feel anything? He stammered. I gave him a half smile. Like what? Nothing. Nothing at all, he squeaked. All right, my business is done, I said, standing up. It was rare for me to be out too, and the day was still young. Got any ideas for what to do next? Li Yiming immediately forgot about the failed lemon prank. Let's go to the movies. I winced. If I was going to the movies, I wanted to go with a beautiful female martial artist, not a sweaty teenage boy. What kind of date was this supposed to be? I looked at Li Yiming's expectant face and sighed. Fine. I decided to humor him just this once. Tell you what, I said, pointing at the half-finished cup of lemon passion fruit. Finish that, and we'll go to the movies. I didn't know exactly what he'd done to the drink, but I knew it was sketchy. My invincible teacher system had flagged it as a source of damage, which meant the acidity was off the charts. Li Yiming looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He stared at the cup, then at me, clearly terrified of his own creation. I decided to let him off the hook this time. Next time, cut the little tricks, I warned. He gave me a dry, awkward laugh. I could tell he was losing his mind internally. My unyielding body skill was so powerful it had neutralized the sourness entirely. To him, I was an absolute monster. There was a cinema nearby, so Li Yiming followed me like a happy puppy, rambling about how incredible this movie was going to be. I couldn't help but chuckle. This wasn't how I imagined a rich, rebellious heir. Shouldn't he be out at rooftop pool parties with supermodels? Then I remembered, he was still a minor. I felt a pang of regret. Maybe I should have applied to be a university professor instead. I was missing out on the chance to educate rich kids at pool parties. It turned out Li Yiming was actually pretty simple. A movie was all it took to make him happy. Still, building a relationship with a student requires sacrifice. When I saw the price for the duo combo tickets, my heart bled. I almost wish Li Yiming would break his legs so he'd measure under 1.2 meters and qualify for a child's discount. We hadn't even reached the theater when Li Yiming stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes were glued to a high-tech storefront with a massive Yinqing logo. The display windows were filled with sleek, reinforced mechanical exoskeletons. Yinqing Technology was the rising star of high-tech weaponry. Their flagship product was the adaptive exoskeleton, starting at a cool $1 million. Most of their clients were beast hunters who needed the extra protection and power during a hunt. Old Sue, let's go check it out, he shouted. What about the movie? I asked, annoyed. Kids are so fickle. I just bought the damn tickets. The movie starts later. I want to see the new gear. I gave in. I could always refund the tickets before the show started. I followed him inside. It was my first time in a Yinqing store. I couldn't afford their products, and I wasn't exactly their target demographic. Li Yiming, however, acted like he owned the place. He ignored the display models and headed straight for the closed testing area in the back. He tracked down the manager, who immediately brightened up when he saw him. "Young Master Li, long time no see," the manager said, bowing slightly. "I'm here to test the new gear," Li Yiming said with a nod. "Of course. I'll arrange it immediately. Please wait a moment." I leaned in, curious. "What new gear?" "Automatic combat exoskeletons," Li Yiming whispered excitedly. "They aren't on the market yet. They're in closed beta. I spent a fortune just to get a spot on the testing list." I blinked. "Automatic combat." "Yeah." He grinned. "The smart chips are loaded with combat data from top-tier martial arts masters. Even a rank 9 student wearing one of these can fight like a rank 7. They can even push close to the power of a rank 6 martial grandmaster." I was stunned. "That must cost tens of millions." "Around that. Maybe more," he said, looking a bit dejected. "My family won't let me buy one. They think it's just a toy." I stayed quiet. I thought he meant it was too expensive, but his family just thought it was pointless. The rich really do live in a different world. For the poor, it's about mutation. For the rich, it's about technology. Personally, I was a bit traditional. Relying on external gear can make you weak and dependent. Most great martial clans actually look down on high-tech armor. To me, the only real power was the power you built yourself. Since the gear was in a closed beta, I wasn't allowed inside the testing hall. I had to wait outside while Li Yiming disappeared with the staff. He signed a standard waiver, the "if you die, it's not our fault" kind, and got suited up. Through the observation window, I saw him put on the armor. It was beautiful, made of high-grade nanocarbon fiber, sleek and futuristic. It adapted to his body perfectly. Once he activated automatic mode, the room came alive. High-speed attack drones swarmed him from every angle. Li Yiming moved like a blur, dodging and counterattacking with precision I'd never seen from him. "This is amazing," he shouted. The suit was powered by a bioantimatter core, giving him a massive boost. He was basically playing a Grandmaster trial version. He even thought to himself how much fun it would be to use this to beat me up. Half an hour passed, and he was still going strong. I wasn't bored, though. Since I was with a VIP, the staff gave me free drinks, fruit, and access to a high-end massage chair. My muscles were still sore from the association testing earlier, so I sank into the chair and pulled out my new certification. I stared at the paper, rank 8 martial artist, entry level. I couldn't stop smiling. It wasn't just about the pay raise. This meant I finally qualified to apply for the Teacher of the Year award. In the past, I wouldn't have dared to dream of it. But now, I was ambitious. If I won the Donghai City Teacher of the Year award, the government would gift me a luxury apartment. In this market, that was worth over $6 million. The competition was brutal. I wasn't just competing with my school, but every teacher in the city for one of 10 spots. There were 2 main criteria: personal performance and class performance. You couldn't just be a strong fighter. Your students had to excel, too. They needed to get into top universities or make major contributions. Rank 8 was the bare minimum to even enter the running. But with my system backing me up, I felt a surge of confidence. That apartment was going to be mine. I was already mentally picking out furniture for my new luxury apartment when the store turned into a chaotic mess. The quiet hum of the massage chair was shattered by shouting. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, only to see 3 members of the Kunlun patrol team rushing inside. They weren't there to shop. They were evacuating the building. The staff looked completely lost. The store manager ran up to the officers, his face pale as he whispered a few questions. Whatever the answer was, it drained every drop of color from his skin. He didn't waste a second, leading the patrol team straight toward the sealed testing hall. "Sir, I'm sorry, but there's been an emergency," a staff member said, rushing to my side. "You need to leave immediately." I froze. "What happened?" "My student is still in there." "We don't have the details yet," he replied, his voice shaking. "All we know is that the store is no longer safe. The patrol team will handle it. Please, follow me." I didn't have a choice. I was ushered out of the building, and by the time I stepped onto the sidewalk, the entire Yinxing store was cordoned off with yellow police tape. A crowd was already gathering, whispering and pointing. I scanned the exits, waiting for Li Yiming to come out, but there was no sign of him. I grabbed a middle-aged man standing near the tape who looked like he knew something. "Hey, what's going on? Is it a beast attack?" "Not a beast," the man said, checking his phone. "Haven't you seen the news? Yinqing Group's servers were hacked. A massive cyber attack. All their testing equipment across the country just went rogue." My heart dropped. Hacked? Again? Yinqing was a massive corporation, and they had plenty of enemies, but I didn't care about corporate warfare. My student was currently strapped into a high-tech combat suit that was now rogue. If it's out of control, what happens to the person inside? I asked, my voice tight. The man just shook his head, looking at this security response. It won't be good. Inside the testing hall, things were much worse. The room was a graveyard of smashed drones. Li Yiming was screaming, but his body wasn't his own anymore. The bioantimatter exoskeleton had completely taken over. It wasn't just moving. It was actively hunting the staff members. The technicians were panicking. They were desperately trying to cut the suit's network connection while dodging blows that could shatter concrete. If that suit broke out of the hall and into the streets, the AI would flag every civilian as a target. It would be a massacre. Li Yiming was terrified. He pulled at the manual release levers, but they were jammed tight. The mechanical overrides were dead. He lunged toward a technician, his arms swinging with terrifying speed. The worker tried to block with his own light-duty exoskeleton, but Li Yiming's punch sent him flying across the room like a rag doll. Blood splattered the floor. Before the worker could hit the wall, a blur of movement intercepted him. A large man caught the technician midair and set him down. "Everyone evacuate," a woman's voice barked. 3 Kunlun patrol members had arrived. The Kunlun team is taking over. The program has been rewritten by a virus. It's in indiscriminate attack mode. Li Yiming's suit pivoted toward the new threat. Before he could strike, a burly patrolman lunged forward and grabbed the exoskeleton's arms with his bare hands. The sheer strength of the man forced the suit to a grinding halt. "Ow! Stop! It hurts!" Li Yiming shrieked. The suit was pressing against his own limbs, crushing him as it fought the officer's grip. The officer cursed and let go to avoid breaking the kid's bones. The moment he released his grip, Li Yiming, sobbing and apologizing the whole time, punched the officer square in the chest, sending the man skidding back. "It's not me. I can't stop it." Li Yiming wailed as he closed the gap instantly, raining down blows. The officer blocked the next strike, the impact so heavy that the reinforced floor cracked beneath his boots. "We need to get this kid out of the suit. I can't fight him properly while he's inside it." "We can't," the woman shouted back, her eyes darting over the suit's glowing panels. "The program is locked. We have to destroy the machine without killing the boy." "What about the power source?" "It's an antimatter core. If we rupture it, the explosion will vaporize him." Li Yiming heard that and completely lost it. "Help me. I don't want to die. Teacher Sue, help." The female officer tried to stay calm. "Don't panic, kid. We'll hold it off. Try to use your own strength to resist the motors." I'm trying. It's too strong." The burly officer was now playing a deadly game of tag, leading the rogue suit around the hall. "This is driving me crazy. I can't hit back or I'll kill him. We're just wasting time." The 3 officers were at a total loss. They were used to fighting monsters and terrorists, not protecting a student trapped inside a berserk weapon. Just as the situation reached a breaking point, a voice echoed from the entrance. "I'll do it." Everyone turned. I was walking toward the center of the hall, my expression grim. I didn't get far before the tall, thin member of the patrol team blocked my path. "Who are you?" he snapped. "I'm his teacher," I said firmly. "I can help." The officer looked me up and down, his eyes widening as he sensed my energy. "A rank 8 martial artist? Are you joking? Get out of here. This machine has the output of a grandmaster. One punch will turn your brain into mush." Inside the ring, Li Yiming saw me and started yelling. "Old Sue, save me. My teacher has immovable stance and force dissipation. He can take it." The 3 patrol members froze. Asterisk immovable stance. Force dissipation? Asterisk. Those were legendary techniques usually reserved for martial kings. The female officer, Qin Yao, blurred across the room to stand in front of me. Her face was a mask of confusion. "You know force dissipation?" I swallowed hard. I couldn't exactly explain the system. Something like that, I muttered. The tall officer scoffed. A rank 8 with force dissipation? Do you believe this crap? Qin Yao hesitated, looking at the desperation in my eyes. The world is full of wonders. I'll believe it. But to make sure you don't die, I need to test you first. She straightened her posture, a terrifying aura erupting from her. I am Qin Yao, a rank 6 grandmaster. My stomach did a flip. A rank 6? One slap from her could send me to the afterlife. Qin Yao circulated her energy, preparing to test my supposed force dissipation technique. I didn't give her the chance. I bolted past her, heading straight for the chaos. No need for a test, I shouted over my shoulder. Just watch. Qin Yao froze mid-palm strike. She exchanged a stunned look with the tall officer. My confidence must have convinced them because they didn't chase me. I skidded to a halt in the center of the hall, right in front of the burly officer who was struggling to contain the rampaging exoskeleton. Lead it to me, I barked. The burly man looked skeptical. Kid, you've got a big mouth. Just do it. He didn't argue further. His body blurred, moving like an arrow released from a bow. In a flash, he was in front of me, the mechanical monster right on his heels. Back off, I commanded. I stepped forward. A dark shadow loomed over me. The next second, a metal fist reinforced by high-grade alloys tore through the air, creating a sonic boom. It slammed directly into my shoulder. Nothing happened. There was no sound of breaking bones. No impact. I didn't even flinch. I stood my ground and reached out, grabbing the mechanical arms pinned to Li Yiming's body. Old Su, you finally came, Li Yiming yelled. He felt the exoskeleton freeze. No matter how hard the machine whirred, it couldn't budge an inch against my grip. The kid looked like he was about to burst into tears of joy. I love you, man. You're a lifesaver. Behind me, the burly officer was speechless. He scratched his head, staring at my hands holding back a machine with the power of a grandmaster. Holy crap, he finally muttered. That's insane. Qin Yao and the tall officer, Jiang Fan, rushed over. Seeing me physically suppress the exoskeleton made their skin crawl. They were looking at a rank 8 martial artist who had somehow mastered a technique reserved for martial kings. It defied all logic. Brother, you are a legend, the burly one said. I ignored the praise. Can we get this thing off him? I asked, feeling the machine vibrating as it tried to break my hold. Suddenly, the burly officer screamed, "Look out! Below!" I looked down instinctively. Li Yiming's leg, controlled by the corrupted software, swung up in a brutal kick aimed straight for my groin. Every man in the room winced. The sound of the wind whistling was terrifying. Old Su, it's not me. The suit is doing it. Are you okay? Li Yiming shrieked. I didn't say a word. Cold sweat poured down my back. Thank God for my invincible teacher system. If not for that, my bloodline would have ended right there. I couldn't believe this machine. It was supposed to be programmed with elite combat data. What kind of elite martial artist fights like a street brawler? It's a single-piece mold, Qin Yao said quickly, her voice urgent. There are no joints to unsnap. We have to destroy it to get him out. Li Yiming's face went pale. Destroy it? I'll be crushed inside. There's one other way, she continued. Wait for the Yunxin group to crack the virus and reboot the system. But we don't know how long that will take. I sighed with relief. At least there was a plan. Fine. We wait for the reboot. Before the machine could try another dirty trick, I swept my leg out. I tripped the exoskeleton, slamming Li Yiming onto the floor. I pinned him down effortlessly. To the 3 officers watching, I looked like a god of war. Old Su, you're getting back at me for the kick, aren't you? Li Yiming groaned from the floor. Don't be ridiculous, I said, keeping a straight face. I'm just making sure you don't hurt anyone else. The 3 patrol officers were having a minor existential crisis. I wasn't even breathing hard. Jiang Fan, the tall one, stepped forward. Brother, what's your name? Su Yong. Where do you work? 3rd Martial Arts High. I'm a teacher. Jiang Fan didn't hesitate. The patrol team needs someone like you. Being a teacher is a waste. With your force dissipation skill, you don't even need to test. I'll recruit you right now. Come to the 7th Division. Hell, you can have my spot as captain. I'll be your deputy. Qin Yao's eyes widened. If he's going anywhere, he's coming to my 6th Division. Being a regular member would be beneath him, but we'd make it work. The burly man, Lu Hai stepped in too. You're only rank 8, Su Yang. Your potential is massive. Don't waste it. Actually, don't even join my 5th division. I'll talk to the director. He can retire, and you can take his job as head of the bureau. I was stunned. These 3 weren't just random officers. They were division captains. They were all at least rank 6 grandmasters, and they were offering me the world. If I actually had the skills they thought I did, I would have signed the papers in a heartbeat. I could see it now. Su Yang, the big boss of the Donghai City Law Enforcement Bureau. But I knew the truth. It was all the system. I appreciate it, I said, giving them a polite smile. But I prefer being a teacher. Everyone has their own path, Lu Hai said, though he didn't give up. But you could always consult. Be a part-timer. Zhang Fan nodded eagerly. Exactly. You wouldn't need to do daily patrols. We just put you on the payroll. You get the salary and bonuses, and we only call you if there's a situation we can't handle. Qin Yao stepped closer. Think about it, Su Yang. The benefits are incredible. I felt a pang of regret. I wanted to say yes, but I couldn't. I have my reasons, I said, sounding more mysterious than I intended. Maybe one day, when my personal issues are resolved, I'll apply. No need to apply, Lu Hai said, pulling out his phone. Here's my number. Call me the moment you change your mind. Add me instead. Zhang Fan shoved him aside. Don't go to the 5th division. It's all meatheads and muscles over there. No women at all. You'll go crazy. Come to the 7th division. We have the best people. Captain Qin Yao of the 6th division spoke up then. Her voice was calm, but her words were a direct hit. The female squad I lead is mostly single, she said. They're all looking for partners. Lu Hai and Zhang Fan both froze. That was a low blow. My ears perked up. I didn't hesitate for a second. I pulled out my phone and scanned Qin Yao's QR code immediately. Captain Qin, let's stay in touch, I said with my most charming smile. Of course, she replied. I wasn't a fool. I decided to spread the love and added Lu Hai and Zhang Fan too. You can never have too many connections. Besides, who knew what the future held? If I ever got the chance to moonlight for the patrol team, I'd jump at it. I just couldn't commit to a full-time gig yet. Lu Hai was still looking at me with intense curiosity. Su Yang, how exactly did you master the neutralizing force? Qin Yao rolled her eyes at him. Don't you think that's a bit rude to ask? Yeah, you don't just go around asking people for their cultivation secrets, Zhang Fan added. He turned to me, his eyes gleaming. Teacher Su, is your school still taking students? Do you accept transfers? I'm thinking of enrolling tomorrow. He then looked at Li Yiming, who was standing nearby looking completely dazed. Hey, classmate, what's your name? Li Yiming, the kid stammered. Brother Ming, good to meet you. Take care of me in the future, okay? Li Yiming looked like his brain had short-circuited. These were 3 division captains, rank 6 grandmasters. In Donghai City, they were the backbone of the elite force. Why were they being so respectful to old Su? Why were they practically begging him to join them? Li Yiming remembered his general knowledge textbooks were still brand new, but even he knew that neutralizing force was supposed to be legendary. Was it really this big of a deal? Seeing their burning curiosity, I just gave them a mysterious smile. It's a secret. Good news arrived shortly after. The engineers at Yunxin Group managed to crack the virus within 25 minutes. They patched the vulnerability and sent the update to testers across the country. The combat exoskeletons were back under control. Luckily, because the company had called for official intervention immediately, no one died. There were injuries, but the tragedy was contained. Yunxin Group issued a public apology and suspended all closed testing. They launched an investigation into 3 possibilities: business rivals, foreign powers, or cults. I hitched a ride back to school with the patrol team. Li Yiming's movie night was ruined, but after everything we'd been through, he didn't seem to care about the cinema anymore. The 3 captains promised to keep my involvement quiet. They knew that if the word got out, every major corporation and beast research facility would try to kidnap me. A master of neutralizing force was the ultimate tool for capturing high-level monsters. I had my own reasons for wanting silence. I wasn't worried about corporations. I was worried about martial arts fanatics. If people thought I was a grandmaster, they'd come from all over the country to challenge me. One surprise attack from a real expert, and I'd be dead before I could explain I was a fraud. Back at school, I made a mental note to tell my students to keep their mouths shut. I couldn't have people thinking I was some invincible legend. Meanwhile, back at the bureau, the three captains were called into the director's office. "You three did well today," the director said, leaning back in his chair. "You suppressed those exoskeletons without any casualties. In other cities, patrol captains were injured and civilians were caught in the crossfire. Rank 6 grandmasters have bodies like steel, but we aren't invincible." "Good job, Director," Qin Yao interrupted. "We weren't the ones who suppressed the exoskeleton." The director frowned. "What? Was it another captain?" "No," Qin Yao said. "It was a teacher from the 3rd Martial Arts High School. One of his students was testing the suit. He stepped in to help us." The director scoffed. "Nonsense. The strongest person at the 3rd High is the vice principal, and he's only a half-step grandmaster. What could a teacher do?" Lu Hai cleared his throat. "Director, that teacher knows neutralizing force." The director froze. He blinked, certain he had misheard. "Repeat that." "He has mastered neutralizing force," Lu Hai said firmly. The director's face went pale. His wrinkled skin twitched with a mix of shock and bitterness. "I must be getting old," he muttered. "I'm hallucinating. I need to buy a hearing aid." "You aren't hallucinating, Director," Jiang Fan said. "We saw it with our own eyes. He suppressed that rampaging exoskeleton single-handedly. It couldn't even move. It was definitely neutralizing force." The office fell into a heavy silence. It took the director a long time to find his voice. If 3 captains saw it, it had to be true. In theory, a rank 8 practitioner mastering neutralizing force wasn't impossible, but it was unheard of. It wasn't about raw power. It was about a profound, almost godlike understanding of martial intent. "He's not even 30, the director whispered, looking over my file. "With that kind of talent, why is he a teacher at a bottom-tier school like the 3rd High? They have no resources. It makes no sense." The captains were just as confused. They had pulled my records on the way back, and the data was bizarre. From primary school through high school, my performance was mediocre. Actually, it was below average. It took me 18 years just to reach rank 9. How can someone with such insane comprehension be so slow at actual cultivation? Lu Hai wondered. The director stared at my files for a long time. Suddenly, his eyes widened as if he'd solved a grand puzzle. "I see. I understand now. This young man. He has incredible willpower." The 3 captains looked at him, lost. "What do you mean, Director?" "We were thinking too small," the director sighed, his voice full of respect. "This young man spent 20 years ignoring his physical cultivation. He put every single second of his life into researching the concept of neutralizing force. He chose a path that most people would never dare to take." The captains felt like they'd been hit by lightning. The realization washed over them, and their respect for me tripled in an instant. To spend 20 years gambling on a single technique with no guarantee of success. Qin Yao whispered. "Think of the hardships. Think of the ridicule he must have faced from his peers while he stayed at rank 9 for years." "Great courage," the director added. "The plum blossom's fragrance comes from the bitter cold." He stayed hidden, enduring the loneliness, until his neutralizing force reached perfection. Truly, he is extraordinary. The director continued to sing my praises, convinced I was some kind of hidden hermit. To him, the fact that I had reached the Grandmaster level but refused to join the elite patrol teams was proof of my noble character. He thought I stayed at the 3rd Martial Arts High School because I was a true educator who didn't care about fame or money. He called me a man of extraordinary courage who had endured 20 years of loneliness to perfect my craft. Honestly, if I had heard him, I would have laughed. I wasn't being noble. I was just trying to survive. I had just come from the administrative office after submitting some paperwork, and I was feeling great. My salary had just jumped by $500. If I kept this up for a few more years and snagged a senior teacher title, I'd be making over $10,000 a month. That was real money. Of course, I had to catch myself. I was a man destined to become a martial god. I couldn't let a tiny pay raise shake my mental state. I needed to stay calm and composed. When I walked back into the classroom, I noticed something strange. The rebellious brats in Class 5 weren't looking at me with their usual hatred. It seemed like Li Yiming had told everyone about what happened yesterday. They actually looked like they respected me a little. I decided it was time to lay down some ground rules. Since they all believed I had mastered the neutralizing force, I might as well use that as my cover. Listen up, I said, leaning against my desk. About my hidden strength, keep it quiet. Don't go spreading it around. The students exchanged glances. I pretended to think for a moment. I was going to organize an outdoor practice session this month, but since you guys love talking so much, maybe I'll just cancel it. The class froze. Their eyes widened. Wait, what hidden strength? One student asked quickly. I didn't hear anything. Did you guys hear anything? Not a word, another shouted. Who is Teacher Sue? I just see a regular guy. I turned away, hiding a smile. Good. I'm currently researching where we should go for our trip. I knew these kids were desperate to get off campus. It was the perfect way to build a relationship with them. Usually, these trips meant going to other schools to spar, but I ruled that out immediately. My students were reckless. If I let them fight other kids, someone was going to end up in the hospital. Besides, trying to talk to them about martial arts right now was like playing a violin for a cow. They just wouldn't get it. A nice field trip to talk and bond seemed like a much better plan. Deep down, I realized these kids weren't actually evil. They were just misunderstood. I went to sit down at my desk, but something fell off. I stood up and flipped over the seat cushion. Taped to the chair was a board covered in long, sharp steel nails. One wrong move, and I would have been skewered. I sighed and tossed the nail board into the corner. I put the cushion back and sat down. I take it back. These little monsters need a serious reality check. Next time, try something more creative, I told them. This is getting boring. The students looked disappointed that I hadn't fallen for it. I scanned the room, my eyes landing on Zhu Tao. He seemed distracted, his eyes darting around the room nervously. I checked his stats, but everything looked normal. I had given him the summary of that new cultivation manual, but I wasn't sure if the proud kid had actually read it. It wasn't just me who noticed. The rest of the class could tell Zhu Tao was acting weird. He had been out of it all morning, and whenever anyone asked, he just shut them down. By the time night fell, the boys gathered in Li Yiming's room to play video games. They looked around and realized Zhu Tao was missing again. What's up with Tao? Someone asked. That's 3 nights in a row he stayed locked in his room. Did the new teacher give him some secret training? While they were wondering, a shadowy figure was currently sneaking into the Class 5 classroom. The figure made sure the coast was clear, then pulled out a phone to use as a flashlight. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sewing kit. It was Zhu Tao. He walked straight to the window curtains. These holes, he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. I can't stand them. I have to fix them. The curtains in the martial arts building were always trashed. Between the wooden swords and stray energy blasts, they were covered in rips and tears. Normally, Zhu Tao wouldn't have cared, but ever since he started practicing the heaven-mending needle technique, seeing a hole in a fabric made his skin crawl. He felt a physical urge to stitch it up. He knew how embarrassing this was. If the class, or worse, I, found out he was into needlework, he'd never live it down. So, he waited until the middle of the night to sneak in. The weirdest part was his state of mind. When he used to practice his family's dragon fist, he was always frustrated or bored. But with the needles, he felt a profound sense of peace. He loved the feeling of the threads sliding through the fabric. Every time he repaired a tear, he felt a rush of satisfaction. Even more incredible was his internal energy. Every time he finished a stitch, his cultivation grew. His movements were becoming fluid and graceful. In just 3 days, he had completely fallen in love with the feeling. Bathed in the dim glow of his phone, Zhu Tao lost himself in the work. He carefully examined every inch of the curtain, his needle moving with surgical precision, blissfully unaware of how much his life was about to change. Zhu Tao's fingers moved faster and faster. He was in a trance, completely lost in the rhythm of the work. Without even thinking, he pinched the steel needle between his thumb and forefinger and gave it a light flick. The needle zipped through the fabric, pulling the fine thread behind it. His fingers blurred, flicking again from the other side. Every strike was perfect. Every movement was precise. He didn't stop until the tear was completely sealed. As he caught the returning needle, he suddenly snapped out of it. He stared at the repaired curtain, his heart racing. What just happened? He had been so immersed, he didn't even realize he was doing it. He wondered if he had just unlocked some kind of legendary technique. Excited, Zhu Tao tried to replicate the move. He flicked the needle with his finger and tried to catch it on the backhand. SSS. He hissed in pain. He slowly pulled the needle out of his own finger. He tried again, and again. After a few more minutes, his fingertips were covered in tiny red dots. This was harder than it looked. He realized he couldn't force it. He had to let it happen naturally and keep a calm mind. He took a deep breath, stopped trying to be flashy, and went back to just trying to fix the fabric. That needle technique is quite rare. A cold, ancient voice drifted from right behind him. Zhu Tao jumped like a startled cat. Goosebumps exploded across his skin. He tried to bolt, but a pair of hands landed firmly on his shoulders. There was no overwhelming force, yet Zhu Tao felt like a massive mountain was pressing down on him. He couldn't move an inch. He turned his head slowly, like a rusted machine. In the dim light of his phone, he saw a face covered in deep wrinkles. He recognized him immediately. It was old Lu, the gatekeeper of number 3 middle school. This was the same man who had caught him trying to climb the school wall once before. Zhu Tao's, but actually started to ache just looking at him. "Grandpa, you scared the life out of me," Zhu Tao gasped. "You didn't make a sound." "I saw how focused you were," old Lu said calmly. "I didn't want to disturb you. Why didn't you turn on the lights?" "I thought a little thief had broken in." As a gatekeeper, old Lu was part of the security detail. There were 4 of them, and at least one was always patrolling at night. Zhu Tao's brain scrambled for an excuse. "I'm practicing my night vision," he blurted out. Old Lu didn't press him on it, but his eyes narrowed with confusion. "Strange. If I remember correctly, you practiced the dragon fist. When you tried to climb that wall, you used it to try and knock me down." Zhu Tao remembered that day. He had been so angry at the old man for stopping him that he'd unleashed his family's secret technique to give the blind old man a shock. Instead, old Lu had handled him so easily that Zhu Tao hadn't been able to sit down properly for a week. "Yes, that's right," Zhu Tao muttered. "Then why are you practicing a needle technique?" Old Lu asked. "I'm dual cultivating," Zhu Tao explained with a dry laugh. Old Lu paused, then snorted. "Nonsense. With your talent?" "I've watched students at this school for years. I've seen kids worse than you who couldn't even figure out the dragon fist, and now you want to learn 2 paths at once? Don't scold me, Grandpa. My teacher told me to do it," Zhu Tao said quickly. "He said I'm a once-in-a-thousand-years genius for needle techniques." Old Lu's face darkened. "Who is your teacher?" Su Yang." Old Lu looked like he was about to explode. "He's misleading his students. This is ridiculous." The old man turned to leave, his hands tucked behind his back. He looked furious. Zhu Tao panicked. Gatekeepers held a very special status in schools. Even the principal had to be polite to them. If a gatekeeper decided to interfere, not even the principal could stop them. If old Lu stayed this angry, I might lose my job. Despite everything, Zhu Tao actually liked me now. He didn't think I was fooling him. "Grandpa, wait. Let me explain." Old Lu stopped and looked back. "What is there to say?" "I don't think Teacher Su is misleading me," Zhu Tao said earnestly. "I really am suited for this. It's the heaven-mending needle technique. I mastered the basics in less than 4 hours." Old Lu scoffed. "Rubbish. You really think you're some martial arts prodigy? Look at yourself. 4 hours to master the basics? With your talent, it would take 4 hours just to find the floor." The old man's words cut deep. Zhu Tao really wanted to punch him, but he held back. "I'm serious. I've already reached the small success stage." Old Lu glanced at Zhu Tao's wounded, bloody fingers. "Is that so? That's just an accident. There's no cultivation without a little injury," Zhu Tao argued. Old Lu was surprised by how much the boy was defending me. He knew the reputation of Class 5. They were the troublemakers who tried to jump walls and insulted the staff. Seeing one of them stand up for a teacher was new. He figured that maybe these kids had finally found someone they actually respected. Even if the dual cultivation idea was stupid, if the kid wanted to do it, I couldn't exactly force him. "Fine," old Lu sighed. "Since it's your own choice, I'll let it go." "Thank you, Grandpa." Zhu Tao exhaled, feeling like he had just saved my career. He figured I owed him a huge favor for this. The next morning, before the sun was even up, I ran into old Lu on my way into school. I gave him a respectful bow and a greeting, but the usually friendly old man just let out a loud, annoyed huff and walked away without a word. I stood there, completely baffled. The teacher walking with me was just as confused. Sue, did you do something to piss off old Lou? No, I said, scratching my head. I have no idea. Maybe he's just going through male menopause. I couldn't think of a single reason why he'd be mad, so I just put it out of my mind and headed to the classroom. I saw the students of Class 5 already doing their morning drills. I didn't want to interrupt, so I went to my office to work on my own cultivation. I was currently practicing the 9 refinement body technique. I was only at the second stage, the bronze bone level, and I was about halfway through. The system didn't show me my own compatibility stats, but after expanding my meridians and developing chaos chi, my progress had skyrocketed. One night of practice now was worth a whole week of work from before. The bronze bone stage wasn't complicated, but it was tedious. I had to wrap my internal energy around every single bone in my body to harden them and increase my defense. Before I met the system, it would take me months just to finish a single toe bone. But now, guided by the chaos chi, I could feel the energy coating my bones with incredible speed. It only took me 30 minutes to successfully coat the bone of my pinky finger. With the chaos chi boosting the process, I could feel that my pinky was now significantly stronger than my other fingers. I decided to run a simple test. I took a 2-centimeter thick wooden board and gave it a sharp poke. My regular fingers could only pierce through 2 layers, but my conditioned pinky went through 3 like it was nothing. If it weren't so short, I was pretty sure it could have punched through 4 or 5. I realized I needed to redo my entire bronze bone stage. If I used chaos chi to recoat every bone, my skeletal strength would be on a completely different level. But you can't get fat off one bite. Cultivation like this drained my energy and stamina fast. By the time I finished just my right hand, a wave of intense hunger hit me. I sprinted to the small fridge in my office and downed every single bottle of nutritional fluid I had. Chaos chi was amazing, but it was expensive. I sat down to do the math. Even with my teacher subsidies, one bottle of that fluid cost about $100. I had just spent $1,200 on a single hand. My heart winced. This was getting pricey. Coating my entire skeleton would cost tens of thousands. I looked at my bank balance and felt a headache coming on. I'd been working for 2.5 years, and even with my frugal lifestyle, I'd only saved up $100,000. Between my regular cultivation and this new bone refinement, I was spending more than I earned. I needed a side hustle. My first thought was the patrol team, but they were useless in a crisis, and if I showed too much strength, they'd probably arrest me for fraud. Being a monster hunter was more realistic, but the barrier to entry was high. Most major corporations required you to be at least a 7th-rank practitioner. Even if I met the strength requirements, the timing was impossible. Hunting trips took 10 days to half a month. I couldn't just disappear from school. I'd have to wait for the holidays. That left me with one option: freeloading off my students. When they leveled up, the system gave me a feedback loop of pure energy. I looked toward Class 5. They were like a herd of fat sheep. Their families were rich, and they had all the nutritional fluids they could ever need. As their teacher, I had principles, of course. I wouldn't steal from them. I'd just benefit from their progress. Freeloading was my path to happiness. Zhu Tao hadn't shown any progress for 2 days. He was likely stuck on the dual cultivation method I gave him. He was too proud to admit he was struggling, so I was in the dark. I decided not to put all my eggs in one basket. I needed to find a matching technique for Li Yiming, who was the second most efficient student in the class. After the whole electrified needle incident, he was actually quite cooperative. While the class was finishing their morning drills, I headed to the library to research. Meanwhile, back in the classroom, Zhu Tao was sitting cross-legged, desperately trying to manage 2 types of energy at once. It was a mess. Every time he tried to compress the violent energy of his coiling dragon fist into his dantian, it felt like his insides were being shredded. He couldn't get used to it. The pain was different every time. His new heaven-mending cloud technique was gentle and easy to control, but the coiling dragon energy was a rebel. If he told it to go east, it went west. He waited until the gentle energy started its natural cycle, then slowly tried to nudge the violent energy out of his dantian to join it. It was like merging onto a highway at the wrong speed. If he was too fast, he'd rear-end the other energy. Too slow, and he'd get hit from behind. After a few failed attempts, the internal collisions sent his blood pressure skyrocketing. His entire face turned a deep, angry red. When the rest of the class finished their drills and opened their eyes, they saw Zhu Tao looking like he was about to explode. His face wasn't just red anymore. It was turning purple. "What's up with Tao?" someone whispered. "He looks like a bruised plum." They were worried, but no one dared to wake him. A sudden shock during cultivation could cause a total collapse. "Where's Sue?" someone shouted. "Go get him." Li Yiming ran to my office and pounded on the door, but I wasn't there. He sprinted back to the classroom, panting. "He's gone. Old Sue isn't in his office." "Of course. The one time we actually need him, he vanishes. Call him. Quick." Everyone pulled out their phones, then froze. Nobody had my number. "I have it," Li Yiming yelled. He dialed me immediately. I was deep in the library stacks when my phone buzzed. I saw it was Li Yiming and stepped outside to answer. "What's up?" "Old Sue, something's wrong. Zhu Tao won't wake up, and his face is purple." "Purple?" I asked calmly. "Is it like the purple bruise you get when your parents hit you?" I knew what was happening. My differential speed method required trial and error. Internal collisions were inevitable. Turning purple just meant his blood was pumping hard. It was normal. "My parents have never hit me," Li Yiming said, sounding confused. "Bullshit," I muttered. "They just didn't hit you hard enough." I wasn't worried. "It's fine. Purple is normal. As long as he isn't spitting blood, he's okay. Actually, even if he spits a little blood, it's still fine. You have to pay a price for power. Once he times the merger right, his strength will skyrocket. He'll be twice as strong as anyone his age." Li Yiming was stunned. "Purple is fine. What the hell is he even doing?" "I can't say," I replied. "When he wakes up, ask him yourself." I hung up. Back in the classroom, the students crowded around Li Yiming. "What did he say?" "He said it's fine. As long as he isn't puking blood, we should just let him be." The students rolled their eyes. They didn't know what kind of crazy training I'd put him through, but they weren't about to let the moment go to waste. They all pulled out their phones and started taking selfies with Zhu Tao's glowing purple face. "Mr. Zhu Tao," one of them whispered to the unconscious boy, "you wouldn't want these purple potato photos going public, would you?" Even though I told them it was fine, I left the library and hurried toward the classroom. As a teacher, I had to make sure nothing went sideways. But when I reached the door and saw them all posing for photos around the purple-headed Zhu Tao, I felt a surge of indignation. These little punks. How could they take embarrassing photos without me? I fought the urge to pull out my own phone. I cleared my throat, putting on my most serious teacher voice. "What do you think you're doing?" The students of Class 5 saw me coming and hurriedly tucked their phones away, looking guilty. I waved them off, acting like I hadn't caught them taking purple potato selfies. "All right, morning training is over. Go get some food and recharge," I urged, shooing them along. "Don't just hang around here causing trouble." They weren't happy about leaving, but their stomachs were growling louder than their complaints. One by one, they shuffled off. Once the room was quiet, I paced around Zhu Tao, my hands behind my back. He was currently deep into the differential speed method I'd devised. It was a clever workaround, but it was just a temporary fix. To truly reach the top, he needed to commit to a single cultivation path. But since the kid was stubborn about starting over, I was stuck for now. I did have one other option, but it was incredibly risky. I possessed Chaos Chi. Theoretically, I could use it to act as a buffer, blending his two conflicting energies into one. It wouldn't be a permanent conversion. Energy is unique to the individual, like a thumbprint. My chi wouldn't just become his. If I wasn't careful, it would just tear his meridians apart. The plan was to use my Chaos Chi to blur the boundaries between his two energies, forcing them to stop fighting and start cooperating. But that was just a theory. I had never tested it, and I wasn't about to use my student as a lab rat. It required a level of microcontrol I hadn't mastered yet. If I messed up, the Chaos Chi would simply swallow his existing energy whole. Sure, I'd benefit. It would be like harvesting a crop to nourish my own power, but Zhu Tao would be ruined. He wouldn't lose his cultivation forever, but he'd be left in a state of total exhaustion, unable to circulate even a drop of energy for a long time. Basically, he'd be a vegetable. I'm not that good yet, I thought, watching him. I can't even micromanage the chi in my own body perfectly, let alone someone else's. Luckily, Zhu Tao's face didn't stay purple for long. After about 30 minutes, the bruising hue faded, and his skin returned to normal. I let out a long breath of relief. The differential speed method had worked. The kid must have actually paid attention to my notes for once. If he had just skimmed them, he'd be in a coma right now. Slowly, Zhu Tao opened his eyes. He looked sharper, more vibrant than I'd ever seen him. Then he saw me standing there, and his face instantly stiffened. I knew this kid by now. He was the type who would die before admitting he was working hard. Practicing the turtle breath method, I see, I said casually. The turtle breath method was basically a way to hold your breath and play dead. It had nothing to do with high-level cultivation. It was just a survival trick for when monsters didn't want to eat rotting meat. I was giving him an out, a way to save face. Humph, Zhu Tao snorted, turning his head. You knew? So why ask? I suppressed a smirk. The others are already at the cafeteria. Go get some energy back. I didn't linger. I turned and walked away. The differential speed method allowed his two energies to coexist, which would make him stronger, but it didn't count as a breakthrough in rank. That meant no pure energy reward for me this time. Behind me, Zhu Tao watched me leave, a flicker of excitement finally crossing his face. It had taken countless attempts, but he'd finally found the perfect timing to slot the aggressive energy of the dragon coiling fist into his meridians alongside his other technique. He could feel the power surging through him. Now he could focus on his main cultivation without the constant, stabbing pain. There was a catch, of course. Every time one of his energies grew stronger, the timing would shift, and he'd have to recalibrate the whole thing. But he wasn't worried about that now. His stomach gave a violent growl, and he bolted toward the cafeteria. When he finally arrived, the rest of Class 5 was almost finished eating. What took you so long? Zhengyu asked. Just practicing the turtle breath method, Zhu Tao muttered, sitting down. He thought to himself, that teacher of ours is pretty good at making up excuses. Saved me a lot of talking. Meanwhile, I was heading to get my own lunch when my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed Captain Qin Yao. My heart sank. Please don't tell me the Yunqing group is suing me. When I had saved Li Yiming from that malfunctioning combat exoskeleton, I'd used so much force that the expensive suit had ended up twisted and mangled. Those things cost tens of millions. I couldn't afford to pay for a scratch, let alone a total loss. I picked up the phone quickly. Captain Qin, is everything okay? Mr. Su, are you busy? I have some news for you. Good news or bad news? I asked, bracing myself. Good news. The Yunqing group has prepared a 30,000 yuan reward for you. I blinked. They weren't suing? They were paying me? Qin Yao explained that during the recent virus outbreak that caused exoskeletons to go haywire across the country, most units had to be destroyed by patrol teams. Since I had managed to stop one without obliterating it, the company was showing its gratitude. The Kunlun Law Enforcement Bureau was distributing the funds to helpful citizens like me. I was overjoyed. 30,000 yuan. I wasn't about to turn that down. I gave her my bank details immediately. Thank you so much, Captain. It's nothing, she said, but she didn't hang up. She sounded hesitant, like she wanted to ask for something else, but didn't know how to start. Captain Qin, I said, is there something you need help with? It's hard to explain over the phone, Mr. Su. Can we meet in person? Sure, I agreed. I'll meet you at the school gate. I doubted she was asking me out on a date. She was a great captain, but she wasn't exactly my type, a bit too flat in the personality department, if you catch my drift. It was probably something to do with her cultivation or a case. I couldn't guarantee I'd be able to help, but I couldn't exactly say no after she'd just handed me 30 grand. I walked toward the north gate. Short trips out didn't require a permit, but as I approached, I saw old Lu standing there with a sour expression. I had no idea why the old man always looked at me like I'd kicked his cat, but I gave him a respectful bow anyway. Old Lu. Going out, he asked, his voice cold. He gestured toward the Kunlun patrol car parked just outside the gate. Someone's waiting for you. I sensed a faint but powerful aura radiating from the patrol car. It was the presence of a rank 5 martial grandmaster. I felt a flicker of confusion, but old Lu didn't make things difficult for me this time. He stepped aside and let me pass. I walked up to the car just as Qin Yao stepped out. Captain Qin, I greeted her. Teacher Su, she replied, her expression serious. I'm sorry for making you come all this way. It's no trouble. What exactly is going on? Qin Yao glanced back at old Lu, who was still watching us from the gate. She lowered her voice. Let's talk somewhere else. I nodded and followed her a short distance away until we were out of earshot. Only then did she speak. Teacher Su, I have an elder in my family. 20 years ago, he was ambushed by a cultist during an operation. He still hasn't recovered. I stared at her, stunned. 20 years, and he's still not healed? The internal energy hasn't dissipated? I knew cults and deviants existed in this world, but this defied everything I understood about cultivation. Usually, when someone strikes you with hidden energy, it's like a drone with a battery. Once the energy runs out, the damage stops. Most people fight back with their own internal breath to neutralize it. At most, the damage should last a couple of weeks. But Qin Yao's elder had been fighting this energy for 2 decades. Not only had it not faded, but it had actually grown stronger over time. My elder has been struggling against this force every single day, Qin Yao said, her voice heavy. His body is failing him. This sounded absurd. There was only one explanation. The cultist who attacked him must have been incredibly powerful and had likely launched a suicidal, all-out strike. Even worse, that energy had to be predatory, something that could forcibly absorb the victim's own strength to replenish itself. Captain Qin, I asked, what was the cultist's rank? Rank 5, Martial King Realm, she said solemnly. My elder was also a rank 5, but he hadn't mastered the art of energy neutralization. My scalp went numb. It was exactly as I suspected. Only a rank 5 expert could produce energy that terrifying. The fact that her elder was even alive was a miracle. The problem was, I didn't actually know how to neutralize energy. Even if I did, trying to dismantle a rank 5 Martial King's energy was a death trap. If I messed up, the backlash would kill me instantly. Seeing my silence, Qin Yao spoke up quickly. Teacher Su, please don't feel pressured. Pressure? I thought. This isn't about pressure, it's about survival. If I could transfer that energy into one of my students, I might be able to handle it through the system, but a rank 5 strike would make a student explode before I could even blink. I'm sorry, I said with a bitter smile, shaking my head. My cultivation level is too low. I wouldn't be able to guarantee anything. Qin Yao waved it off, showing no resentment. She understood the risks. Her family had already hired rank 5 experts who specialized in neutralization, but they had all failed. Her elder's body was too fragile to handle the aggressive intervention of another martial king. It was a delicate procedure that would likely kill him before the energy was gone. She had hoped that because I showed talent for neutralization at a low level, I might have a gentler method. But she knew it was a long shot. She just needed to hear me say no so she could finally give up on the idea. I understand, Teacher Su. I won't take up any more of your time. She forced a smile. If you ever consider joining the patrol team, call me first. Take care, Captain, I said, watching her drive away. I didn't say it out loud, but I actually did have a way. I didn't have neutralization, but I had primal chaos chi. That stuff was far superior. Neutralization just moves energy around. Primal chaos chi devours it and turns it into my own power. However, the risk was still astronomical. A rank 5 Martial King's energy was a raging beast. If I tried to swallow it and couldn't digest it fast enough, I'd be the one who ended up dead. I turned back toward the school gate, lost in thought, when old Lu's voice snapped me out of it. What's your relationship with that Qin girl? We're friends, I answered casually. A word of advice, the old man grumbled, his eyes narrowing. Stay away from the Qin family, unless you want to get burned. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but the old guy just turned his back on me, acting like he was back in his grumpy shell. Fine, keep your secrets, I thought, feeling annoyed. I went back to my room and looked up the Qin family online. The only thing I could find was information on Qin Yao herself. She was 31, a rank 6 martial master, and a graduate of Kunlun Martial Arts University, one of the top 10 schools in the country. She was a literal genius. There was nothing on the Qin family as a whole, but I could guess. With elders at the rank 5 level, they were definitely a hidden martial arts clan. I didn't understand why old Lu was so wary of them, but it didn't matter. It wasn't like a family that powerful was going to beg for my help anyway. After lunch, I headed straight to the library. I needed to find a matching cultivation manual for Li Yiming. His cultivation efficiency was currently sitting at negative 400%. Unlike Zhu Tao, who was just lazy, Li Yiming was disheartened. He had completely given up hope. I figured if I could find him a manual that actually worked, his attitude would change. I started using the same deduction method I used for Zhu Tao, but the results were depressing. When I tested manuals for Zhu Tao, I found high compatibility scores almost immediately. With Li Yiming, the numbers were pathetic. The highest score I could find was for leg techniques, and even that was only 22%. Everything else was in the single digits. It didn't make sense. Li Yiming's family technique, the Han Virtue Art, was a leg-based style. Why was his compatibility so low? Was he really just that untalented? Or was his family's manual too high level for him to grasp? I frowned and opened the database for basic leg-based cultivation manuals. I was going to have to check them one by one. The list of basic cultivation manuals was massive. Unlike the advanced techniques, there were over 4,000 of these basic methods to sift through. It was easily going to take me several days of work. I wasn't in a rush, though. I planned to take them one by one. Anything with a compatibility score below 300% was an immediate skip. With Li Yiming's current efficiency, only a manual with at least 300% compatibility could save him. Anything less, and his cultivation speed would stay in the negatives. While I was busy digging through the library database, the students of Class 5 weren't exactly idle. Most of the other classes were in the dance studios or training halls practicing hard, so my students felt like they needed something to pass the time. They didn't want their limbs to atrophy from lying around, so they sat in a circle and started playing a game of werewolf. Zhu Tao wasn't in the mood, though. He waved them off, told them he was going for a walk, and slipped out of the classroom. The second he was out of sight, he bolted straight for the roof of the teaching building. Now that the differential flow method was working, he was desperate to practice the heaven-mending cloud needle technique. He needed a quiet place where the rest of Class 5 wouldn't notice him, and the empty rooftop was perfect. He found a spot, sat down, and pulled a small black container from his bag. It was about the size of a thumb. Inside was a set of specialized steel needles. He knew that to do a job right, you needed the right tools. Ordinary needles would snap instantly under the pressure of a martial artist's energy. He had spent a fortune online to buy these needles made of reinforced metal, the same material used in thunder needles. It was a metal processed by a beast called a stone gold beast. It was funny how human technology had leaped forward mostly because of its connection to these monsters. Zhu Tao picked up a needle and began to circulate his energy. After 3 days of practicing the heaven-mending technique by secretly sewing clothes, he had actually achieved a small level of mastery. A moment later, the needle between his fingers began to vibrate. His eyes widened. He couldn't believe it. He really was a genius for needle techniques. It took him 1 day to learn the basics and 3 days to reach the second level of the manual. By channeling his energy through his fingers into the needle, he could increase its strength and piercing power. Reaching the second level meant he was finally touching the true essence of hidden weapons. However, to actually fire the needle, he needed a specific throwing technique. He had accidentally performed it once while he was secretly sewing the classroom curtains. Back in his dorm last night, he had confirmed it. The move was called the straight needle stance. Theoretically, that move could only be performed at the final stage of the heaven-mending technique, requiring a cultivation level of rank 7. He had skipped levels and performed a high-tier move by accident. For words flashed through his mind, God-given talent. But then, the confusion set in. How did I see this in him? Was it really just intuition? Zhu Tao didn't believe in intuition. He figured I must have some other secret method. After all, the fact that I could cultivate the empty slash was already unbelievable. He started wondering if I had an ulterior motive. Was I trying to get something from him, or did I truly just hate to see a piece of unpolished jade go to waste? He shook those thoughts off quickly. Regardless of my reasons, he decided he owed me. He told himself that if he ever became a powerful figure, he'd pay me back with luxury cars and villas. Then, he looked at his primary cultivation method, the coiling dragon divine fist. It felt like a heavy burden now. He had memorized every word of the differential flow method I gave him. He knew that as he progressed, he would need to keep adjusting it. He was at a crossroads. Should he cripple his current cultivation to start over, or keep things as they were? He frowned. Personally, He was willing to restart, but his parents would never agree. They had invested too much in him. Scrapping everything for a low-level basic technique would seem insane to them. Even if his parents agreed, the clan elders wouldn't. The Zhu family was a traditional martial arts clan. They only practiced the coiling dragon technique. Anything else was seen as heresy. Zhu Tao was already an outcast among the younger generation. If he switched techniques, he'd be treated like trash. Plus, even if he mastered the needle technique, it capped out at rank 7. After that, he'd be on his own, wandering in the dark for a high-level manual that might not even exist for such a niche style. He sat in silence for a long time, his expression hardening. He decided he'd rather be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. He was going to be the king of needles. I stayed in the library until nightfall. My eyes were burning. I had only finished about a quarter of the database and found nothing. The highest compatibility I found for Li Yiming was 67%. I was starting to wonder if he was even suited for leg techniques at all. He was the complete opposite of Zhu Tao. It felt like his dull aptitude was a mountain I couldn't climb. But with 3/4 of the library left, I wasn't giving up yet. When I finally got back to the faculty dorms, I saw a figure loitering near my door. It was Li Yiming. He looked jumpy, but when he saw me, he ran over. He asked where I'd been, and I told him I was at the library. I let him inside. My room was a standard 2-bedroom teacher's apartment, plenty of space, though it felt a bit empty. "What are you doing here this late?" I asked. I brought you something," he said, lifting a heavy bag. He opened it to reveal a pile of fruit and snacks. "It's a thank you gift for saving my life." I couldn't help but laugh. "I saved your life, and you bring me snacks. What else was I supposed to do?" he joked. "If I offered myself to you, you'd go to jail. I know the law. That's a 6-year minimum." I chuckled and took the bag. "All right, I appreciate the thought. Just listen to me and practice hard from now on." Li Yiming turned serious. "I definitely will." I felt a sense of relief. These kids were rebellious and annoying, but they weren't bad people. The fact that Li Yiming went out of his way to buy this showed he had a good heart. However, as I looked through the bag, I spotted a red envelope tucked at the bottom. The kid was trying to be smooth with a cash bribe. I pulled it out and handed it back to him. "Don't do this," I said. "Come on, old Sue, it's not much. Just a token of my appreciation." I smiled but shook my head. "Saving you is my job and my duty. Look, I like money as much as the next guy, but this is a matter of principle. I want our relationship as teacher and student to be pure, not bought." I pushed the envelope back into his hand. "Having your heart in the right place is enough," I said, pushing the red envelope back. "Anything else is unnecessary." Li Yiming's hand was a bit sweaty. He hesitated for a second before decisively tucking the cash back into his pocket. "Old Sue, I knew I wasn't wrong about you." I let out a sharp huff. "As if you've ever been right about anything before." "I'm not joking," he insisted. "From the moment you walked through the door, I knew you were different. Not just tall and handsome, but you have this aura. It really hits me." "Stop," I cut him off. "Oh, then I'll stop." "Don't stop," I countered. "Keep going." Li Yiming stared at me, clearly thinking I was a bit shameless. He cleared his throat. "Right. I actually have something to ask you. Do you know the Qin family?" He was a kid from a prominent clan, so I figured he'd have the inside scoop. Elder Lu's cryptic warning earlier had been eating at me. "I hate people who talk in riddles." Li Yiming looked puzzled. "Which Qin family?" "The big sister who showed up at the testing hall," I said. "Do you know her?" "Oh, her? You mean?" I slapped him across the back of the head before he could finish. "Watch your mouth. Don't go driving down that road with me." He rubbed his head and gave a cheeky grin. "I've seen her a few times. We're not close, but if it's that Qin family, I know the story. Tell me." He paused, looking at me sideways. "Old Sue, you're not thinking of dating her, are you? She's a martial sovereign. She won't look at you. Besides, she's from a major martial arts clan. They do arranged marriages. You can't just date them. And besides," he held his hands out in front of his chest, making a rounded shape. "Ow, don't hit me. I'll stop." I pulled my hand back. "It's not about that. I just want to know their situation." "There isn't much to tell," Li Yiming shrugged. 20 years ago, the Qin family was legendary. Then the patriarch was ambushed. He's been half dead ever since. The family started sliding downhill. In the East Sea, if you don't have a fifth-rank martial king backing you, a great clan eventually becomes a small one. It clicked for me then. So the other clans want to replace them? It's normal, Li Yiming said, acting like I was the naive one. Big fish eat little fish. Little fish eat shrimp. That's how my family got knocked down too. I blinked. Your family is in decline? His voice turned bitter. We were just hangers-on for a bigger clan. To be honest, we never really made it. But hey, old Sue, I have a proposal. What? Pass everything you know to me. When I become the head of my family, I'll take you to the best clubs every single day. Young models, the works. I laughed, mostly out of frustration. I'm willing to teach, but are you capable of learning? He thought about it for a second. Fair point. Forget I said anything. I finally understood Elder Lu's warning. The Qin family was in a dangerous spot. Other clans were circling like vultures. Even though a dying camel is still bigger than a horse, especially with someone like Qin Yao holding the line, it was a mess. Elder Lu didn't want me getting caught in the crossfire of a clan war. I took the advice to heart. I was just a regular guy. If I got dragged into their fight, I wouldn't even know how I died. I looked at Li Yiming. Since he was already here, I decided to do some psychological groundwork. So you're ambitious. You want to be the family head. He lifted his chin. Of course. Who wouldn't? You get to sleep wherever you want. I stared at him. This kid's mindset was dangerous. Part of me wondered if I should just send him to prison now to save him 20 years of trouble. It might be better to let the law handle him early. Sensing my gaze turning sharp, Li Yiming waved his hands frantically. Old Sue, I'm joking. Just a joke. I hope so. He gave a dry laugh. Seriously, it's a joke. Even if I were the head, I wouldn't even have a seat at the family table during the ancestral feast. With my talent and strength, I'd be lucky to eat with the dog. I know my limits. I probably won't even get into a martial arts university. After high school, I'll just wait to die. A loser like me. Stop, I frowned. You're not a loser. I've observed you closely, little brother. You have the potential of a war god. Li Yiming scratched his head. Old Sue, are you blind? I'm not joking. You really have it. Your time just hasn't come yet. Oh, and when will that be? When the time comes. He looked at me like I'd just told him the sky was blue. It was classic nonsense, but the truth was I hadn't found a cultivation manual that fit him yet. I couldn't persuade him properly. But I'd learned one thing. He had ambition. Ambition was good. It was better than him just lying down and giving up. All right, it's late, I said. Go back and rest. Morning practice tomorrow. Got it. But old Sue, don't tell anyone I came here, he whispered urgently. I snuck out. The others haven't accepted you yet. If they knew I was this close to you, they'd turn on me. In public, I'm still on their side. But if there's any intel, I'll give you a heads up. Deal. Once he left, I couldn't help but smirk. I didn't expect being a teacher to feel like a spy movie. I shut the door and sat down to meditate for my nightly routine. Outside, Li Yiming was creeping away from the faculty dorms. Hidden in the dark shadows of the bushes, a pair of eyes watched him with confusion. Asterisk, what is that kid doing here? Why is he being so sneaky? Asterisk. Zhu Tao was crouching in the greenery, observing. He had spent the whole night thinking and had finally decided to secretly cripple his own cultivation to start over. He couldn't let his family know. But at his age, he needed a guardian to oversee the process at the Martial Arts Association. He had decided to ask me for help. He hadn't expected to see Li Yiming. That fence-sitter is a traitor, Zhu Tao thought with a cold snort. He couldn't believe there was a mole in their group. He wondered what kind of bribe I'd given the kid. Then again, he realized he wasn't exactly in a position to judge. Once Li Yiming was gone, Zhu Tao leaped out of the bushes. He moved like a shadow, sprinting into the dorm building. A moment later, he was standing at my door. He hesitated, feeling the sting of humiliation. Then he gritted his teeth. If I'm not embarrassed, the embarrassment belongs to someone else. Knock, knock, knock. I had just entered a meditative state when the sound pulled me out. Thinking Li Yiming had forgotten something, I opened the door. Instead, I saw a young man with his hands behind his back, staring up at the moon from the hallway balcony. He looked cold, lonely, and dramatic. It is lonely at the top, he said slowly. He went silent. I waited. That's it. What's the next line? His face turned bright red instantly. He raised his voice, trying to regain his dignity. I said, "It is lonely at the top. Stop trying to act cool if you can't even finish the poem." I sighed. "Get down from there. This is the 12th floor. If you fall, you'll break your legs." He didn't look back. "It is lonely at the top." Fine, fine, I get it," I said, exhausted. Dancing with one's shadow under the clear moonlight, it feels like being in another world. "Happy now?" The boy finally turned around, his face a mask of cold indifference. "Good. We are of the same mind." He hopped down, kept his hands behind his back, and brushed past me into the room. My jaw nearly hit the floor. He wasn't like this before. Had practicing the cloud-stitching needle for a few days turned him into a drama queen? Was it some kind of side effect of the mental technique? I shut the door and turned around, only to see Zhu Tao standing by the window again. He was back to staring at the moon with that brooding, dramatic expression. I couldn't be bothered anymore. I walked over to my floor mat, sat down cross-legged, and closed my eyes. "It's late," I said. "Why are you really here?" "Since you've asked so sincerely," he replied, his voice dripping with unearned gravity, "I shall tell you. That heaven-mending cloud-stitching technique you recommended? It's not bad. It suits my taste. However, the differential cultivation method only treats the symptoms, not the root cause. I've decided to cripple my current cultivation and start over from scratch." My eyes snapped open. I stared at him in disbelief. "You've made up your mind?" "I have." "Then go do it," I shrugged. "You don't need to consult me." "I cannot let my family know about this," he said, finally turning away from the window. "I need you to take me to the Martial Arts Association to oversee the process." "Get lost," I snapped, rolling my eyes. I rejected him without a second thought. Was this kid insane? He wanted me to help him secretly destroy years of progress funded by his elite family's massive resources? If his parents found out their son's future was wiped out by a teacher, they wouldn't just fire me. They'd probably have me erased from existence. My teaching career would be over, and I'd likely spend the rest of my life behind bars. Zhu Tao went back to gazing at the moon. "Name your price. Whatever conditions you have, I'll meet them." "Not happening," I said firmly. "Losing my job is a small matter. Going to prison for ruining a genius heir is a big one. You're trying to kill me, kid." "Don't worry," he said coolly. "I'll protect you. I'll explain everything when the time comes." "There is no room for negotiation," I insisted. "If you want to restart your cultivation, go home, talk to your parents, and convince them. Let them take you to the association." Zhu Tao hesitated, letting out a long, heavy sigh. "You know as well as I do that's impossible." "Then stop thinking about it. Dual cultivation of both techniques is fine," I said, trying to be reasonable. "It's just a bit more trouble. You'll have to adjust your internal rhythm every time your level increases. But you can still steadily reach the 7th rank without any major issues." "And after that?" he asked. "After that, it's your own business," I said, feeling exhausted. "Do you really expect me to provide you with high-level manuals forever? If I had that kind of power, would I be sitting here chatting with you?" Zhu Tao fell silent. I didn't say another word. I closed my eyes and pretended to meditate, making it clear I wasn't going to help him commit academic and physical suicide. "Teacher, help me," he muttered. I stayed silent. I didn't move an inch. Seeing that I wasn't budging, his stubbornness flared up again. "Fine. I'll just find someone else to take me." He tucked his hands behind his back and started walking toward the door. I still didn't move. I kept my eyes shut, breathing steadily. "I'm leaving," he announced. "I'm really leaving now." I didn't react. "Teacher, okay, fine. I'll stop acting cool. Just please help me think of a way." Hearing his tone finally soften, I opened one eye. "There is only one way. Convince your parents." Zhu Tao gave a bitter laugh. "The coiling dragon divine fist is our family's legacy. It's our symbol. They will never let me abandon it. I don't have the ability to convince them. If it really comes down to it, I'll just have to force the reset myself." My heart skipped a beat. Forcing a cultivation reset was an extreme, desperate measure. There were many ways to do it, the simplest being to strike one's own life gate pressure point. The survival rate was barely 20%. It was essentially a coin flip with death. Normally, I wouldn't worry about a student being that reckless. But Class 5 was different. These kids weren't normal. Especially Zhu Tao. He was so obsessed with his dignity and his path that he might actually try something that stupid. I couldn't let him do that, but I also couldn't take the blame for his family's wrath. I opened my eyes and looked at him. I can help you. Zhu Tao's face lit up instantly. Really? But not now, I said, thinking fast. When you reach the 7th rank, 5th mystery realm, come find me. I know a way to let you transition fully into the new technique without needing to cripple your current power. Zhu Tao froze. He looked at me with deep suspicion. I feel like you're just messing with me to buy time. I cursed inwardly. These kids were too sharp. He had seen right through me. Honestly, his idea to reset now was logically sound. It would wipe the slate clean and remove the interference from his family's technique. I was definitely stalling, but I was stalling for a reason. I had the chaos chi for my system. In theory, I could use it to harmonize his conflicting energies without a reset, but I wasn't familiar enough with it yet. My control wasn't precise enough to perform surgery on someone else's meridians. I needed time to master the micromanipulation of that energy. Whether you believe me or not is up to you, I said, putting on my best mysterious master persona. That is my promise. I won't help you until you hit the 7th rank. Zhu Tao didn't hesitate for long. Fine, I'll do it your way. I'll continue the dual cultivation for now, but when I hit the 7th rank, I'm coming for you. And it won't take me long. Good, I nodded. Now get out. I need to finish my evening practice. Understood. This student takes his leave. As soon as he left, I slumped back, feeling drained. First, I had to play a spy thriller with Li Yiming, and now I was acting in a period drama with Zhu Tao. Coordinating these kids' fantasies was more exhausting than actual teaching. I shook it off and got back to work. I pulled out my phone, set the timer, and began my meditation. I circulated the chaos chi through my body, pushing it to move at incredible speeds through my meridians. When I opened my eyes, I lunged forward and hit the stop button on the timer. Even though I had done this before, the results still felt absurd. I looked at the screen and couldn't help but grin. My speed was getting ridiculous.